Chapter 178. Wuxia had been paying close attention to Ying Zheng and the others. When Baiqi pulled out the nearly 10 feet long bugle horn that looked like it was made from a crooked bone, Wuxia immediately covered his ears and used the 7 holy deities and devils to guard his soul. Meanwhile, the silver lotus was wheeling and dancing in his spiritual ocean, shielding Wuqi's 3 spiritual and 7 physical souls in the stamen of the lotus, while emitting a large amount of 5-colored light that surrounded him. Baiqi raised the bugle up high, took a deep breath, and blew into it with all his might. A sonorous and impassioned dragon roar echoed out. When the dragon roar was heard, there was no other sound between the heaven and earth. Even the rolling sound of the great waves had vanished. The dragon roar was dignified and noble, filled with an ancient aura that came from the primordial era, and could not be violated. It was as if a divine dragon with an incomparably venerable status had really descended to the mortal world, and let out such a long and shocking roar. Upon hearing the dragon roar, Wanying Dragon King's body trembled, and he nearly spun and fled. Fortunately, he still remembered his identity as the Dragon King of Longyuan River, and managed to guard his mind, preventing himself from making a fool of himself in front of countless demon beasts. He clenched his fists tightly, stared at Baiqi with his bloodshot eyes, and roared. A bugle horn made from the bone of Dragoning. A bugle horn made from the bone of the god of Dragoning. How could they have such a precious treasure in their hands? In the ancient times, when the human emperor, Yu the Great, was trying to control the flood, countless aquatic demons and devils had gathered together and fought against him. The divine dragon, Dragoning, descended from the sky and intimidated all the demons with his mighty power, helping Yu the Great to control the flood. Dragoning himself was a superior divine dragon among the dragons, the leader of all aquatic demons under the heaven. On top of that, the virtues he achieved during the flood control had intimidated all demons, and he had become in existence like a deity in the hearts of countless aquatic demons under the heaven. The long and loud roar of Dragoning had a very strong deterrent and lethal force to these aquatic demons. Although it was only a bugle horn made from the bone of Ying Dragon, and let out a dragon cry, all aquatic demon beasts who heard it, as long as they were below the gold core realm, had their heads exploded and died. With just a single dragon cry, over 1 million Xiantian realm aquatic demons within an area of 100 miles were killed. Countless venomous insects, big fishes, and other aquatic beasts that were hiding in the flood were killed. The surrounding flood suddenly turned crimson red, emitting a pungent smell of blood. Suddenly, 2 streams of blood spurted out from Baiqi's nostrils. Just now he had mustered all his strength to blow this horn. Just this sound alone consumed the power that he had painstakingly cultivated for 60 years, and it almost caused his cultivation level to drop from the peak of the nascent soul stage by a small realm. Taking a deep breath, Baiqi looked at the ground of Qin Army's campsite, which was still shaking violently. He turned to look at the gigantic turtle that was slowly rising and getting ready to smash down again, and the great demon Lohai, who was twisting his body and approaching him. He mustered all his energy and once again blew at the bugle horn with all his strength. A shrill dragon roar rang out once again. In an instant, countless aquatic demons in the surroundings were killed, and over 10,000 demon beasts who had formed their demon cores were knocked unconscious, swaying and drifting away along with the flood. Hanju, Tanshui, and Lohai had their bodies trembled at the same time. They let out loud roars at the same time, trying to cover the dragon roar of Dragon Ying's bugle horn. But no matter how hard they roared, the dragon roar just kept coming out from the bugle horn, and was not affected by their roars at all. An arrow of blood sprayed out from the bugle horn, as Baiqi had blown the bugle for the second time. Immediately, his cultivation base dropped from the peak of the nascent soul realm to the late stage of the nascent soul realm. The energy essence of his nascent soul was greatly damaged, and the source of his soul was wounded as well. Blood burst out from all 7 apertures of his. The arrow of blood came out from his mouth, shooting out along the bugle horn. Countless aquatic demons fled in all directions in a great panic. Facing the roar of Dragoning, they had no power to resist, and could only flee in a sorry state, following the deterrence and driving intent of the dragon roar. Apart from several thousand aquatic demons who had formed their demon cores and several hundred demon beasts who had formed their nascent souls, All the other aquatic demons and ordinary fishes, shrimps, turtles, and crabs hiding in the water had either died or fled for their lives. In just a blink of an eye, the surrounding water level had dropped to a depth of 1,000 feet, revealing the towering mountain ridges. Baichi let out a shrill howl. Suddenly, a blood-red flame burst out from his body, rolling and rolling like sticky blood and wrapping around his entire body. The nearly 10 feet thick blood-red flame was rocking and rocking, emitting a pungent smell of blood. Vaguely, one could see countless twisted human faces twisting and rolling amidst the blood-red flame, letting out shrill and miserable howls. Baichi gripped the bugle horn tightly, cried out with a shrill voice, "How dare a demon like you come here and act presumptuously? I, the Iron-Blood Dachin, am not someone that you demons can underestimate. Dachin, Dachin, Dachin." Following Baichi's crazy howl, the several 100,000 Qin soldiers in the field headquarters raised the weapons in their hands, exerting all their strength, divine soul, and blood to burst into a thunderous roar. Dachin, Dachin, Dachin. The sonorous and impassioned roar shook the surrounding water, and caused the surrounding mountains to crumble. It even shattered the fleshly bodies of several hundred weakest demon cores and water demons, leaving only Jin Dan, who was fleeing. The fierce murderous aura of several 100,000 Qin soldiers transformed into a blood-red murderous aura that one could see with naked eyes, shooting straight up into the sky. After that, it was attracted by the blood-red flame shrouding Baichi's body, fusing straight into Baichi's body. The blood-red flame rose and rose from Baichi's body, and his aura abruptly turned into a towering murderous aura, as if he was unparalleled in the world, as if he was wielding a sword and slaughtering all under the heaven. Baichi laughed ferociously, brought the bugle back to his mouth, and blew it once again. This time, it was not the dragon cry of Ing Long that echoed out, but the cry of kill, that came together from countless captains and soldiers. The blood-red flame shrouding Baichi's body vanished abruptly, and a bloody murderous aura sprayed out from the bugle. It divided into 3 extremely strong murderous intents, shooting straight towards Hanju, Tanshui, and Lohai, the 3 great demons. The murderous intents were shapeless and intangible, but they could be seen with naked eyes, heard with ears, and felt with the body. 3 murderous intents shot out and smashed onto the bodies of 3 great demons almost at the same time they came out from the bugle. Lohai howled miserably. One of his horns was cut off, and a huge amount of 5-colored blood sprayed out and fell onto the ground, corroding the ground and creating a huge hole. While trembling violently, Lohai spun and fled. Countless light needles and fine sand kept flying back into his body, while the part of his body that was cut off disintegrated in an instant, turning into light needles and fine sand and fusing back into his body. Hanju let out a miserable shriek. Suddenly, a huge wound, about a mile long and several tens of feet wide, appeared on his 1,000 feet thick back armor. A huge amount of pale golden blood sprayed out from the wound, and tears kept bursting out from Hanju's eyes due to the severe pain. The giant turtle, who was known for its slow movement, was now moving its short limbs and sprinting back to whinnying Dragon King's side like a wild gust of wind. A loud boom that sounded like the collapse of a mountain, and the cracking of the earth was heard coming from underneath the field headquarters, as the ground within the circumference of tens of miles suddenly collapsed. The giant crab howled miserably and kept spitting out countless white bubbles along the way, fleeing back to the camp with green blood stains all over his body. His left pincer had been cut off by the murderous intents, and sticky green blood kept bursting out from it. He kept howling and howling miserably, hiding behind whinnying Dragon King's back. The 3 murderous intents shot out and severely wounded the 3 great demons. Baichi's skin burst open, and his blood sprayed all over the people around him. After unleashing this attack, Baichi, who was a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator, had his cultivation base drop to mid-stage nascent soul realm. Furthermore, his cultivation base was still dispersing, and it seemed like he could barely maintain the cultivation base of mid-stage nascent soul realm. However, with only a cultivation base of nascent soul realm, Baichi was able to defeat 3 great demons who had broken through to nascent soul and divine transformation realm. Wuxia looked at Baichi, who now looked like a man covered in blood, and could not help but twitch his lips. How could the Daqin dynasty have so many precious treasures? A bugle made from the bones of Dragoning. How could they have such secret treasures? If not because of this bugle, when millions of aquatic demons risked their lives to attack the Qin army's field headquarters, even if Yingzheng really had the body of a divine dragon, he would still be smashed into a meat paste. But now among the millions of aquatic demons, some had fled, and some were dead. Only a group of nascent soul and Jin Dan realm demon beasts were left behind, whose minds were disturbed by the dragon roar of dragoning. What a good fellow Baiqi. He had gathered the murderous intent of several tens of thousands of Qin soldiers, and turned it into a single strike that could injure a great demon of nascent divinity realm. The cultivation technique he cultivated was indeed overbearing and evil. Wuqi stared at Baiqi with bright eyes. He was worthy of being Baiqi the human butcher, the Daqin Baiqi who could kill 400,000 people without batting an eyelid. After Baiqi fell to the ground, Li Xian, who was standing behind him, walked up and held tightly the bugle that had consumed a lot of energy. Ying Zheng's laughter was heard coming from afar. Whinnying Dragon King, you don't have to bring out those useless subordinates of yours and make a fool of yourself. If you want to break into my Daqin's field headquarters, you will have to do it yourself. Hee, with the bugle of dragoning in your hand, how much of your dragon energy is suppressed? Whinnying Dragon King took a deep breath, stepped on a cloud and drifted forward, then laughed coldly and said, I've taken a fancy to the bugle made from the bones of dragoning. Hee, even though 50% of my dragon energy is suppressed by the roar of dragoning, it is still a piece of cake for me to kill all of you. And with your overall strength, how long can the bugle last? 3 breaths? 5 breaths? How many earth immortals of nascent soul realm do you have to waste on this? Amidst the strange laughter, Whinnying Dragon King's body began to expand, and gradually transformed into a muscular half-dragon half-human body, standing 50 feet tall with a dragon head and a human body, fully clad in a golden scale armor. His robe fluttered in the wind, revealing his muscular body with bulging muscles. Water vapor, clouds, and tiny electric arcs were coiling around his body, emanating a powerful aura that seemed to be unstoppable. With a wave of both hands, a pair of purple gold thunder hammers appeared in Whinnying Dragon King's hands. The handles were 40 feet long, and the hammerhead was twice the size of a large water tank. The pair of ridiculously huge hammers were shrouded in purple mist and golden light. Then Whinnying Dragon King casually swung the hammers. Immediately, thunderclaps echoed out in the surroundings, and a violent storm came rolling down crazily once again. Great waves rose several thousand feet high from the ground, and countless thunderbolts struck onto the pair of hammers. The hammers burst out a large sheet of purple light like a flame, illuminating Whinnying Dragon King's entire body, and giving him a frightening look. Wuqi cast a covetous glance at the pair of purple gold thunder hammers in Whinnying Dragon King's hands. They were definitely a pair of spirit items, and they were of excellent quality. The one who forged this pair of hammers must be a top-notch grandmaster craftsman. Although there were not many formations and restrictive spells in the hammers, all of them were of excellent quality. They were perfectly integrated with each other, and had brought out the full power of the materials used in the hammers and the restrictive spells. As for this pair of hammers, Wuqi did not have any intention of coveting it. Without even trying, he knew that the weight of this pair of hammers was incredibly heavy. Except for Whinnying Dragon King, there was no one else that Wuqi could carry it. This pair of hammers was a heavy weapon used for close combat, not a magical treasure that could be controlled by spells. The hammers collided forcefully with each other. Whinnying Dragon King let out a ferocious laugh, raised the hammers and leaped towards Yingzheng. Yingzheng, you little bastard. Blow blow for Lao Tzu. Blow blow for Lao Tzu. Whinnying Dragon King's strange laughter shook the surrounding great waves, causing them to roll and roll. Following his movement, the huge waves crazily slapped towards the Qin army's field headquarters. Yingzheng's face turned unsightly, while Li Xian held the bugle tightly and blew the bone bugle. A shrill and sonorous dragon cry rang out, as more than half of the mist and water vapor on Whinnying Dragon King's body dissipated. The shadows of 8 flood dragons and 1 serpent emerged behind Yingzheng's back. He took a deep breath, then suddenly pulled out an 8 feet long, strangely shaped heavy sword, swinging it towards Whinnying Dragon King. A loud boom rang out as the pair of hammers and the heavy sword clashed together. Chapter 179. The heavy sword held in Yin Zheng's hand was 8 feet and 1 inch long, the width of an adult's palm, and the thickest part of the sword ridge was 3 fingers thick. The surface of the sword was as bright as a mirror, emitting a faint purple glow and yellow glow. Under the yellow and purple glow, on the mirror-like surface of the sword, there were images of rivers and mountains, forests and grasslands, towns and villages, and all sorts of living beings. Above all these images, amidst the yellow and purple glow, were 9 divine dragons, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, twisting and wheeling in the air. A loud boom rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. The purple glow transformed into airwaves that could destroy everything and spread in all directions. When the airwaves were still tens of miles away from the wooden city, they were shattered into pieces. Wanying Dragon King's body did not move, and he was still hovering on top of the cloud. However, a white mark could be seen on both of his hammers, as they were damaged by Yin Zheng's heavy sword. Yin Zheng was knocked flying several thousand feet away by the heavy hammers. The extremely heavy impact had opened up countless wounds on his body, and blood kept oozing out from them. However, his heavy sword was not damaged at all. Yin Zheng smashed heavily onto the ground, sinking several hundred feet deep into the ground. While coughing blood, he dragged the heavy sword and slowly climbed up from the pit. Laughing out loud, he looked at Wanying Dragon King and said, "Evil dragon, how is the power of my natal divine weapon, the sword of Qin Emperor?" He raised the sword up high and swung it down forcefully. Suddenly, countless chants of "Long live the Emperor" rang out in the sky. Amidst the thunderous chants, a few miles long, deep cracks suddenly appeared on the ground where the tip of the sword pointed. Wanying Dragon King's face twisted, as he stared fixedly at the tiny crack on the head of the hammers, which was smaller than a strand of hair. A frightening gurgling noise was heard coming from his throat. Clouds began to rise from his body, shooting up several tens of thousands of feet into the sky like an erupting volcano. After the time it took to finish a pot of tea, Wanying Dragon King finally let out a stern roar. "Kid, how dare you damage my treasure?" Abruptly, both hammers flew out from his hands. One of them smashed towards Yin Zheng, and the other towards Li Xian, who was standing on top of the wooden city wall and blew the bugle just now. The dragon cry just now had suppressed over 50% of the dragon energies in Wanying Dragon King's body, and the force exerted on his hammers was greatly weakened. Even the item spirit of the Thunder Hammer had its spirituality suppressed by half. That was why it was wounded by the sword of Qin Emperor. The bone of Yin Dragon brought too much of a threat to all aquatic creatures. Therefore, Wanying Dragon King had made up his mind to kill Li Xian first. The heavy hammer whistled as it flew out, bringing with it a sky full of thunder and lightning. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts whizzed down from the sky. With the 2 hammerheads as the focal point, the thunderbolts brought with them monstrous electric flames. There was nothing else between heaven and earth. Only the 2 hammerheads shining with dazzling lightning attracted everyone's attention. Clenching the sword of Qin Emperor tightly with both hands, Yin Zheng cried out sternly, "Li Xian, get out of the way!" Amidst the long and shrill cries of 8 flood dragons and 1 serpent, a great amount of blood burst out from Yin Zheng's body once again. Abruptly, his body grew taller by 1 foot, and he thrust the sword with all his might towards the heavy hammer that was falling down from above. The 9 Dragons Cauldron Grand Magic used the blood essence and soul of flood dragons as the cultivation materials, and it was also a divine ability that cultivated both the fleshly body, soul, and magical power at the same time. In terms of fleshly body alone, Yin Zheng's strength was one of the strongest. However, Wanying Dragon King's strength had gone beyond the limit that Yin Zheng could handle. He was an old monster who had been cultivating arduously for several tens of thousands of years, and had tempered his fleshly body to the limit of demon dragons, almost ready to ascend into a true dragon. The weight of the Thunder Hammer was incredibly heavy as well, and when it was thrown out by the old dragon with all his strength, the force was more than enough to destroy a small planet. Clang! The skin on both of Yin Zheng's arms exploded, sending blood and flesh flying in all directions. A large amount of pale golden blood dripped onto the ground, merging with the blood of countless dead aquatic demon beasts. Zhang was smashed deep into the ground by the heavy hammer. The loud rumbling of the hammer shattered the ground, bringing Zhang down to a depth of 30,000 feet. The tremendous force shook Zhang to the point that his internal organs were riddled with countless cracks, and his body was nearly shattered into pieces. On top of the city wall, Li Xian held the bugle tightly, and once again blew it without caring about anything. The dragon roar of Dragon King echoed out once again. Wei Dragon King's body trembled, as the dragon energies in his body were suppressed by another 50%. He let out a long and furious roar, gave Li Xian a fierce glare, and suddenly waved both of his hands towards the great waves in the distance, coiling up several dozens of huge water dragons and rushing towards the top of the city wall. Li Si came before Li Xian, who was bleeding from his 7 apertures. The scroll was hovering before him, emitting a pale golden gleam. With a calm expression, he wrote over 100 characters on the scroll in a row. After that, he flicked the tip of his brush and picked out over 100 murderous characters from the scroll. Then, they transformed into a faint silver light and flew towards the heavy hammer that was smashing down from above. The forward momentum of the heavy hammer halted abruptly, as the invisible force collided with it and produced a loud, ear-splitting boom. Li Si's body trembled, as several dozens of thunderbolts suddenly shot out from the hammer and smashed forcefully onto his body. The black robe worn by Li Si expanded abruptly, transforming into a clump of dark cloud that covered his entire body. The thunderbolts smashed into the dark cloud and exploded, causing it to roll and scatter. Li Si's body kept suffering from heavy blows, causing him to open his mouth and cough out a mouthful of blood. Chi-Chi, a group of several dozens of men who were dressed like scholars, gathered behind Li Si. They lined up in a strange formation, pulling out seals, scrolls, writing brushes, iron rulers, chains, and many other objects. Then they recited a long and sonorous chant in unison. The law is the one who compiles the books and records, sets them in the government, and distributes them to the common people. The law follows the law of the heaven and earth, and rules all living beings. The law draws the Tao of the heaven and earth, and rules all living beings. Following the chanting of these men, all kinds of strange magical items in their hands began to emit a golden gleam, which kept injecting into Li Si's body. A bright golden gleam burst out from Li Si's body. Abruptly, he pulled out a seal, raised it up towards the sky and cried out sternly, "The law follows the heaven. The Tao of the heaven and earth becomes the commandment of all living beings. What are you waiting for if not now?" Then he flipped the seal, unleashing a beam of golden gleam towards the thunder hammer that kept falling down from the sky. A miserable cry rang out, as Wei Dragon King's heavy hammer suddenly spun in the air, falling down from the sky like a bird with broken wings. Wei Dragon King was caught unprepared, and before he could figure out the logic behind Li Si's strange attack, the beam of golden gleam had already smashed heavily onto his body. The yellow gleam itself did not possess any offensive strength, but it came with a strange commandment force. The cloud surrounding the old dragon vanished abruptly, and he fell down from the sky like an ordinary mortal, nearly falling to the ground. Fortunately, he reacted in time. He let out a furious roar and hastily stepped onto a cloud and flew back up into the sky. However, he had lost a great deal of face, and his face was flushed red with anger. Once again, Li Si waved the seal toward the approaching water dragon. Grinning coldly, he said, "The human emperor is here. Why don't you disperse your puny demonic technique?" Following Li Si's rebuke, the water dragon summoned by Wei Dragon King with his mighty magical power was shattered instantly. Countless streams of water shot down from the sky, and a heavy rainstorm began to pour down from the sky. Wuxia was shocked by what he saw. Li Si's divine ability of verbal compliance was close to a monstrous level. Wuxia had no idea how he managed to comprehend this divine ability. However, this divine ability was not suitable for Wuxia. It was a divine ability that had a great limitation, as it was created by borrowing the willpower of others. It did not bring much benefit to the user, and thus, Wuxia was not interested in it. Wei Dragon King waved his arms and summoned the 2 heavy hammers back into his hands. Then he turned to Li Si and roared furiously, "You bunch of juniors, all of you will die here today." You are going to make me mad. Then Wei Dragon General's body swelled up once again. This time he no longer played any feints. Instead, he simply swung the two huge hammers and swung them crazily towards the top of the city wall, as if he was forging iron. He did not care what kind of divine ability or magical ability it was, as he would rely on his incredibly powerful dragon body and tremendous strength to smash all of them into meat paste. He wanted to see what kind of tricks they could come up with. Right at this critical moment when Wei Dragon King flew into a rage out of humiliation, Wuxia suddenly discovered that the several 100,000 soldiers in the Qin army's campsite outside the wooden city had lined up into a strange formation. At the center of the formation stood a huge dark green cauldron, with 3 legs and a height of 49 feet. Su Fu was leading several hundred practitioners, walking and dancing around the cauldron while reciting some strange incantations. As they were reciting the incantations, the blood of over 1 million aquatic demon beasts who died tragically in the battle, together with the pale golden blood that Zhang spilled on the ground, were all sucked into the cauldron. All the blood seemed to have teleported, as it disappeared from where it was and reappeared in the cauldron. On the surface of the cauldron, there were pictures of farmers farming, fishermen fishing, shepherds grazing, woodcutters chopping firewood, mountains, rivers, and countless strange beasts, insects, and fishes. As the blood kept being injected into the cauldron, various patterns on its surface began to emit a faint glow. A suffocating, vigorous, and thick pressure, which felt like a boundless ocean and a bottomless abyss, was gradually unleashed from the cauldron, bringing along an ancient aura. This was. A cold gleam flickered in Wuqi's eyes. He had already recognized the origin of this cauldron. It was the same cauldron that was crafted by the human emperor, Yu the Great. During his journey of conquering the flood, he used his mighty divine ability to suppress countless aquatic demon beasts who were subdued by Long. The name of this cauldron was the Universal Water Spirit's Divine Cauldron of Yu the Great, a frightening magical treasure that specialized in suppressing all kinds of aquatic demon beasts. This treasure had broken away from the classification of magical item, magical treasure, spirit item, and immortal item. Because of the virtue of conquering the flood that had gathered on it, it had evolved into an acquired item of virtue, possessing a mighty power and the ability to suppress the fate of a kingdom. It was more than enough to ensure that the fate of a kingdom would last for a long time, and not be affected by any external forces. To put it bluntly, the power of this cauldron was simply too strong. As long as it was guarding the kingdom, anyone who wanted to attack the kingdom would have to weigh their overall strength. If they did not have enough overall strength, they would be killed by the cauldron. Naturally, the kingdom would last for a long time, and this was the logic of the so-called long fate. As the Universal Water Spirit's Divine Cauldron of Yu the Great gradually unleashed a mighty aura, all the flood dragons and demon beasts, including Catfish Flood Dragon, began to tremble violently. They could not control themselves and fled into the distance, not even daring to turn their heads back. Wei Dragon King, who was in the middle of unleashing his mighty aura, turned his head around and stared at the cauldron that was slowly floating up into the sky. Abruptly, he stuck out his long tongue and screamed, "Damn it! This is. You bunch of bastards! How could you have this thing in your hands?" Casually putting away the hammers, Wei Dragon King spun, and left without even snorting. He transformed into a golden flood dragon that measured several thousand feet long, brought up a strong gust of wind as he spun and fled. His speed was at least 100 times faster than Catfish Flood Dragon and the other aquatic demons. Although his cultivation base was nearly at the level of Heaven Immortal, he did not have the courage to fight head-on against this frightening treasure that was said to be able to intimidate all aquatic demons under the heaven. Seeing all the demon beasts fleeing for their lives, Wuxia twisted his body and abruptly transformed into a clump of water vapor, merging into the flood that filled the ground. At this point in time, the area 10,000 miles in circumference was filled with raging waves. Using the escape art of water was the best and fastest way to flee. Just when he had fled tens of miles away, he heard a loud boom coming from the sky. A beam of green light shot out from the cauldron of Yu and landed on Wei Dragon King's back. Wei Dragon King's body turned stiff. Countless scales on his back were shattered, and a mouthful of blood, mixed with raging flame, burst out from his mouth and shot out several thousand feet away. He cried out in pain, then fled in a sorry state, leaving behind a shrill whistle of wind breaking. In just a blink of an eye, he was nowhere to be found. Muffled explosions kept ringing out. Among the several 100,000 Qin soldiers, at least several tens of thousands of them could not withstand the frightening counterforce when the Cauldron of Yu was activated. Their bodies exploded one after another, turning into a rain of blood that blotted the sky. The few hundred practitioners around Su Fu were howling miserably. Nearly half of them were killed by the explosion, while the rest fell to the ground with blood gushing out from their 7 apertures, unable to move anymore. Su Fu's body turned stiff, and he fell straight down to the ground, rolling his eyes and fainting on the spot. Both sides were severely wounded. Neither Daqin nor those aquatic demons could gain the upper hand. Chapter 180. The flood had receded, and huge trees that were knocked down by the flood could be seen everywhere. The red sun hung high in the sky, while the jarring sound of a bugle echoed out from the camp of Qin army. The remaining less than 200,000 Qin soldiers trod on wing-shaped magical items, each carrying a porcelain jar filled with the ashes of their comrades. They lined up neatly and flew toward the northwest direction. A dragon chariot pulled by 9 black dragon horses was seen flying in the center of the formation, surrounded by a large troop of Qin soldiers. The huge Cauldron of Yu was hovering above the dragon chariot, emitting a faint dark green glow, threatening all the aquatic demons and devils that might come back. Even if they were retreating, the Qin army would never give the enemy any chance to attack them. Wuxia stood on the peak of a lofty mountain that was washed away by the flood, looking at the retreating Qin army with a gloating smile on his face. After that, he breathed out a deep sigh. Although the Qin army had suffered a great loss this time, it was not a serious injury. None of those important ministers and generals were killed, but many soldiers and practitioners were killed. For Daqin dynasty, this was just a drop in the ocean. It was a pity that they could not cause a greater loss to the Qin army, and could not gain more benefits from them. Wuxia looked at the retreating Qin army with envy, breathed out a deep sigh and said, "Isn't the old Dragon King going to chase after them? Perhaps they don't have the strength to activate the Cauldron of Yu anymore." Although the Cauldron of Yu possessed a tremendous power, how could an ancient item of virtue be controlled by a mere nascent soul cultivator? Su Fu had gathered the blood essence of countless aquatic demons that had died tragically, and together with a thread of human emperor's blood essence found in Ing Zheng's body, he had barely activated the Cauldron of Yu and wounded Wanying Dragon King with just one strike. Wuxia believed that as of now, the Qin army did not have the strength to activate this precious treasure. If Wanying Dragon King reorganized his army and chased after them, there was a high chance that the entire Qin army would be wiped out here. Standing right next to Wuxia, the catfish flood dragon Hanju, Tanshui, and Lohai, the 3 great demons who had transformed into their human forms, shook their heads with fear and said, "We can't do it, we can't. That treasure is specialized in restraining us, the aquatic demons. We can never get close to it." Other than the old Dragon King, no one could withstand its breath. However, this time the old Dragon King's spine was broken, and 2 of his dragon tendons were also broken. Without 10 years of recuperation, his cultivation will not be able to recover. Wuxia didn't say anything. Wanying Dragon King's injury was definitely not as serious as he claimed. This old demon dragon was afraid of death. He would be able to ascend to become a true dragon as long as he survived the last thunder calamity. At this critical juncture, he dared not take any more risks. On the eve of ascension, it would really be a joke if he were to accidentally suffer heavy injuries and die. The longer a living being lived, the more afraid they would be of death. This logic could be applied to Wanying Dragon King as well. Sighing softly, Wuxia shook his head and said, "We can only watch them leave." Catfish Flood Dragon and the few great demons breathed a long sigh of relief, as if they were sending off a plague god, and said, "We can only watch them leave." Wuxia looked at the few water-kind spirit creatures. He truly didn't want to see their relaxed smiles. He sneered and said, "They have left, but they will come back. Don't forget that Zhang is going to cultivate the 9 Dragons Cauldron Grand Magic. He still lacks the blood essence and soul of a flood dragon. And with that, he will be able to cultivate the first divine ability and attain the cultivation base of Heaven Immortal. When they come back, Catfish Flood Dragon's dark face instantly turned pale. She opened her mouth wide and did not say a word for a long while. On the other side, Hanju Tanshui and Lohai breathed out a long sigh of relief. They looked at Catfish Flood Dragon with a pitying expression, breathed out a long sigh at the same time and said, "It's the blood essence and soul of a flood dragon." Catfish Flood Dragon blinked her eyes, stomped her feet, and suddenly cried out, "I can't live in Longyuan River anymore. I can't live here anymore. I want to move. I want to move. I can't live in the Western Ocean, and those people have retreated to the Western Ocean. I want to find a new place to stay in the Eastern Ocean. I'll go find the old Dragon King now, and ask him to write me an official document, asking me to move to the Eastern Ocean." Shaking her head, Catfish Flood Dragon stomped her feet, spun and left. But after a few steps, Catfish Flood Dragon spun again, clenched her jaws tightly, and pulled out 36 pale golden scales from her body. She gave them to Wuxia and said, "Little brother Wuxia, thank you for saving my life. I don't even know the use of most of the treasures in Sea Catfish's cave. These are just some meager things, and I can't repay you for saving my life. These scales are of great use to you human cultivators, so I'll give them to you." Wuxia stared blankly at the scales in his hand, then threw his head back and breathed out a long sigh. A kind person, she was definitely a kind person. He had taken away all the treasures in Catfish Flood Dragon's cave, 30% of her blood essence, and the flood dragon body tempering technique she had learned. He was already very satisfied with the gains, but she still took the initiative to give him 36 dragon scales. How could he accept that? Wuxia took over the dragon scales, looked at Catfish Flood Dragon, nodded his head and said, "It's just a trivial matter, not worth mentioning. In the future, if you need Wuqi's help, just go to Duke Yan Li's mansion in Ji City, the capital city of Great Yin Dynasty, and look for him." Catfish Flood Dragon and the 3 great demons exchanged a glance, then shook their heads at the same time and said, "We can't go there. We, the Aquatic Clan, can't leave the shore for more than 10,000 miles. We've heard about Ji City, a place where there are some demons who have cultivated into the form of birds in the forest, serving as great Yan sinecures. There are 3 beast kings, 2 bird kings, and a few demon kings who live in seclusion, all of whom are great Yan sinecures. But for us, the Aquatic Clan, our power will be greatly reduced once we leave the water, and it's not comfortable to stay on the shore. So, we won't go there." Lu Hai sneered and said, "We, the Aquatic Clan of Longyuan River, have a grudge with the subordinates of those few beasts. They have already become great Yan sinecures, so how can we go there? If we go there, we might not be able to come back. Although those old demons are staying in the depth of Ming Mountains, and they only listen to the imperial edict of Great Yin Dynasty, many of their disciples and grand disciples are serving in Great Yin Dynasty. The grudge between us, the Aquatic Clan of Longyuan River, and them is too deep. We can't go to Ji City." The few aquatic demons shook their heads, then stepped onto their demon clouds and flew towards Longyuan River. On the other hand, Wuxia was taken aback by the news they revealed. The few demon kings who shared the same fame as Wanying Dragon King were actually Great Yin Dynasty's sinecures? But why didn't Yan Dan and his brothers tell him about this? But when he thought about it, weren't Xiongqing and his brothers demon bears who lived in the forest? Since all 12 of them had joined Great Yin Dynasty and become the Imperial Guards, how could their parents and other seniors be related to Great Yin Dynasty? Looking at the demon clouds that were flying away, Wuxia shook his head lightly. Sure enough, he could never underestimate anyone under the heaven. Hee, Yan Dan actually had such a trump card hidden in his sleeve? If that was the case, wasn't the so-called 13 immortal sects of Great Yin Dynasty just a joke? What was the use of these 13 immortal sects? Were they trying to fool the people under the heaven? Wuxia turned his head and looked at the Qin army that was about to disappear into the distance. He breathed out a long sigh. Fortunately, the Qin army did not leave Ming Mountains to attack Great Yin Dynasty. Otherwise, If those sinecures of great Yin dynasty were to strike, the Qin army would be in big trouble. No wonder Yin Dan dared to be so lenient. No wonder he had been in a secluded cultivation for so many years, ignoring all the affairs of the imperial court, and the internal affairs of great Yin dynasty were in a mess. As long as there were demon kings who had cultivated their nascent divinity, he had no fear of someone plotting to usurp the throne. It's a pity that I, Wuqi, have to bear the blame for nothing. Everyone under the heaven thinks that I'm the one who wiped out Wei Merchant. Who should I tell this injustice to? Lu Buwei, oh Lu Buwei, please don't seek revenge from me. Breathing out another long sigh, Wuqi too stepped on a beam of light and plunged into the ground, heading towards one of his secret caves in a far distance. In the secret cave, Wuqi spent half a month, consuming all the nearly 100 Jin Dan he had collected this time. Finally, all 10 false cores produced a thread of innate nectar essence that belonged to Wuqi himself. The misty false cores began to glow with a faint silver gleam, and their quality was much denser than before. Wuqi's cultivation base had suddenly become a few times stronger. While absorbing the Jin Dan essence, he was also constantly digesting Catfish Flood Dragon's blood essence, strengthening and tempering his fleshly body. The black pearl used by Catfish Flood Dragon was the same as the acquired pearl of fire element that Wuqi owned now. It was a natural spirit pearl formed by the acquired water essence, and it contained a very powerful water essence energy, which made it extremely powerful. After a preliminary refinement, Wuqi placed it in his dantian, constantly nourishing and refining it with his own energy essence. The fire and water pearls were spinning in the shape of a taiji in his dantian. Nourished by the 2 pearls, the energies in Wuqi's heart and kidneys became stronger and stronger, and the strength of his blood and energy was greatly improved as well. However, the several dozens of treasures found in Catfish Flood Dragon's mansion greatly exceeded Wuqi's expectation. That Catfish King's mansion should be the Immortal's Cave that Catfish Flood Dragon found accidentally, and those treasures should be the treasures she found accidentally in the cave as well. All these treasures were refined by her ancestors, and were very powerful magical treasures. Presumably, Catfish Flood Dragon's mansion used to be the Immortal's Cave of a senior cultivator. Among these treasures, most of them were lower-grade magical treasures, but only a small diamond-shaped mirror stood out from the rest. It was a beautiful diamond-shaped mirror, with ancient and heavy runes densely intertwined on its back. Vaguely, large sheets of watery clouds could be seen appearing and disappearing on the surface of the mirror. On the back of the mirror was a small button made from 3 Chinese alligators, and on top of it were 2 characters, Cold Electric, that were carved with very fine writing. Wuqi sent his divine sense into the mirror, and vaguely sensed a faintly discernible divine will hiding in it. It was a mirror that had almost turned into a spirit of its own, and was about to give birth to its own item spirit. Perhaps because Catfish Flood Dragon did not inherit the specific legacy, she did not discover the advantages of the mirror. Instead, she kept it in the cave carelessly, and did not even prepare to take it out to fight the enemy. In Wuqi's eyes, this cold electric mirror was even more precious than some spirit water pearls. But too bad, in Catfish Flood Dragon's hands, it was like a pearl covered in dust, and did not bring out its full potential. He casually wiped the surface of the mirror, injected a thread of energy into it, then performed an incantation gesture with his left hand according to the runes on the back of the mirror, unleashing a beam of spirit light, and shaking it on the surface. Immediately, an auspicious light flashed on the surface of the mirror, as several dozens of tiny electric arcs shot out from it, hitting a small cliff several miles away. Soundlessly, thunderbolts exploded, and the cliff, which stood 1,000 feet tall, instantly turned into fine dust that drifted in the air. No matter it was the electric arcs or the thunderbolts exploding, none of them made any sound. It truly lived up to its name of Cold Electric. Wuqi was extremely satisfied with this mirror, as it was a supreme treasure that could be used to launch sneak attacks from the back and launch sneak attacks at the enemy. With this Cold Electric mirror, all the crossbows in his storage ring could finally be retired. After fiddling with the mirror for a while, he pinched his fingers and calculated the time since he came to Meng Mountains, and Wuqi was shocked. So much time had passed without him noticing. He sprung to his feet hastily, carefully using the teleportation formation to leave the secret cave, then stepped on his sword beam and flew away from the mountain. A few days later, Wuxia had left Meng Mountains and landed on the outskirts of Meng Village. Right when he stepped into Meng Village, which was now crowded with people and filled with piles of building materials, Meng Xiaobai immediately came running toward him. "Big brother, you're finally back. According to your plan, Duke Chengfeng has reached the last step, and he is about to succeed." He paused for a brief moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "But there are a few talisman masters from Heavenly Spirit sect guarding the capital city of Gaoling Kingdom, so it's not easy for Duke Chengfeng to strike." Upon hearing Meng Xiaobai's words, Wuqi could not help but be filled with anger. Heavenly Spirit sect again? Heavenly Spirit sect again. Chapter 181. Ji City. A light snow had just fallen, and the fertile land several tens of thousands of miles outside the city had turned into a sheet of white. Smoke could be seen lingering in the sky of countless villages and towns. The faint smoke mixed with cold air and frost had covered the sky, making it so dark that not even a single ray of sunlight could be seen. The cold wind blew across the wasteland in the early winter, sounding like the howling of millions upon millions of ferocious ghosts. From time to time, large sheets of snow would be rolled up and sent flying in all directions. 1,500 miles west of the city, in a peach forest that was covered with a thin layer of snow, a black dot suddenly shot out from the void. In just a blink of an eye, it expanded into a dark sphere that measured several tens of feet in circumference. Tiny electric arcs burst out from the dark sphere, smashing the soil and rocks on the ground, and creating numerous deep pits of different sizes. Accompanied by a series of tiny explosive noises, the dark sphere lasted for less than 2 seconds before it disappeared abruptly. A few middle-aged men clad in luxurious robes emerged from the disappearing dark sphere, escorted by a dozen cultivators who were brimming with spirit. They glanced around, then one of the men pulled out a map and casually cast a beam of light on it. A large sheet of light rushed out from the map, revealing the topographic map of the area several tens of thousands of miles in circumference of Ji City. A tiny golden dot was blinking on the map, marking their location. The myriad-mile starfire talisman that Patriarch found in the mansion of an immortal is truly marvelous. Despite the distance of several tens of millions of miles, it still brought us straight into the territory of Great Yin Dynasty. However, the direction is slightly deviated by over 1,000 miles. This is caused by our lack of cultivation base. The middle-aged man who was holding the map smiled pleasantly and said, "If Patriarch were to cast the talisman himself with it, perhaps we could have teleported straight to the city gate of Ji City without any error." Another middle-aged man solemnly placed a translucent, pale golden talisman made from some strange material into his storage ring. It was a talisman that kept shooting out large sheets of starlight. He nodded and said with a smile, "Of course. Since Patriarch has once again encountered an immortal fate, perhaps he will have the chance to break through into nascent soul and divinity. Once Patriarch succeeds in his mission, who will we have to fear in this world?" The few middle-aged men laughed joyfully, then together with the cultivators behind them, they rode on their sword beams and flew towards Ji City. The sword beams moved at an incredible speed. After they had traveled over 1,000 miles, they finally stopped and began walking towards Ji City. All of them were Earth immortals of nascent soul realm, and some even had the cultivation base of peak-stage human immortals of Jindan realm. Although they were walking, their speed was incredibly fast. With just a single step, they could travel a distance of several thousand feet. Not long after that, they arrived at the front gate of Ji City. As they were dressed luxuriously and had an extraordinary bearing, the city guards who guarded the entrance didn't give them too much trouble, and allowed them to enter Ji City. Wearing a reserved smile on their faces, the group of men rented a few luxurious coaches from a coach shop near the city gate. After that, they ordered with a loud and clear voice, "Go to Wei Merchant in Fugui Alley of Middle One City." Several coachmen responded with a louder and crisper voice. Then, they whipped the horses several times, and drove the carriages toward the central first city at a fast speed. There was still a distance of over 100 miles from the outermost city gate to the central first city. Although the roads in Ji City were wide and spacious, And the beasts pulling these coaches were all extraordinary beasts with incredible speed. It would still take them 4 to 6 hours to reach their destination. Right when the few coaches walked out from the front gate of the coach shop, a couple dozens of faintly discernible dark shadows darted out from the back of the coach shop, quickly heading towards different places in G-City. A couple dozens of golden-winged swifts, who were small in size but flying at an incredible speed, silently flew up from the residential houses around the coach shop, flying quickly towards all the administrative offices of Scouting Office, Swallows, Criminal and Justice Court, and many other departments of violence. Wherever the few coaches went, the city gates were closed one after another. A large number of soldiers from the city guards rushed up to the top of the city wall, firing all kinds of powerful crossbows and bolts. All the bolts were glinting with the unique glow of runes and energy stones. These powerful crossbows and bolts had the power to threaten cultivators, and were all lethal weapons crafted by the craftsmen from Mo sect. Even a Jin Dan human immortal would be killed on the spot if he was hit by one of these bolts. The number of sky patrolling Eagle Guards who were flying and wheeling in the sky on their daily patrol duty had gradually increased. Originally, a group of sky patrolling Eagle Guards was responsible for the daily patrol of 3 to 5 neighborhoods, but now, the number of sky patrolling Eagle Guards had increased to 2 groups of sky patrolling Eagle Guards, who were responsible for the surveillance of a single neighborhood. Above every high point in the city, green and red lights were flashing and blinking. A large number of beast warriors from Scouting Office had emerged, guarding these important spots. In the streets and alleys where the few coaches passed by, the number of peddlers, and miscellaneous people had increased abruptly. Using countless excuses that they could not find any loopholes, they joked and laughed as they walked through the streets and alleys. It was as if an invisible net had tightly surrounded the few coaches. When the sky was about to turn dark, the few coaches arrived at the entrance of Wei Merchant, which was ablaze with bright lights. The Wei Merchant, which had been thoroughly cleaned up, looked exactly the same as when Wei Xiaoxiao was still here. Guards clad in the uniform of Wei Merchant were still standing before the entrance, and the gatekeepers and coachmen were still waiting in the gatehouse. A couple dozens of handsome mounts were tied to the posts in front of the entrance. These mounts were kicking their hooves impatiently, while a few coachmen were trying to calm them down. Tens of luxurious coaches were parked before the entrance of the merchant. Obviously, some distinguished guests were paying a visit. Vaguely, the sound of a bell could be heard coming out from the inside of the merchant. The tune was graceful and melodious, like the tune of the heavens. A few middle-aged men alighted from the coaches, casually tossing a few thumb-sized ocean pearls to a few coachmen as payment. After that, they walked into the merchant with their heads held high and chests puffed out, escorted by the cultivators who came with them. Hanging on their belts were the purple gold medallions that only the core members of Wei Merchant would have. It indicated that they were people with a status equal to Wei Xiaoxiao. The servants and guards at the entrance dared not to show any neglect, and hastily welcomed them into the merchant. The few coachmen picked up those valuable ocean pearls, and fiddled with them for a while. Then, with a cold smile on his face, Chi-Chi turned to the few middle-aged men and shouted, "Thank you, Great Master, for your generous gift. May Great Master live a peaceful life, and live a prosperous life for generations to come. May you have hundreds of children and thousands of grandchildren, and may you live a long and prosperous life." Amidst the long and loud shout, the few coachmen slowly drove the coaches away from Wei Merchant. The front door of the merchant was tightly shut. Soundlessly, over 300 Jin Dan cultivators strode into the merchant, quickly placing pieces of pre-made formation discs on the ground. In just a blink of an eye, they had laid out 3 layers of formations around Wei Merchant. With Wei Merchant as the center, all the ordinary people living in the nearby streets were evacuated, and all the open spaces were filled with formation discs of various colors. A great number of Jin Dan and nascent soul cultivators were bustling about nervously among the formation discs, linking them together and forming into a complete formation. All the formations were mainly used for restraining and trapping, and there were no dangerous killing formations. The few middle-aged men strode towards the main hall of the merchant. When they were still several tens of feet away from each other, one of them laughed out loud and said, "Xiao Xiao, I, your father, have come to see you." Ha ha ha, you've done a good job here. When your father heard Patriarch praising you, I feel very gratified. The drumming in the main hall did not stop, but there was no answer from Wei Xiaoxiao. The few middle-aged men brought a group of people and strode into the main hall, but they were taken aback by what they saw. Apart from the nearly 100 musicians who were playing the musical instruments in the hall, only Yan Dan was seen sitting right in the middle of the hall. A middle-aged man, clad in a long white robe, with a crane overcoat draped over his shoulders and 9 crowns on his head, was sitting right next to Yan Dan, chatting with Yan Dan with a faint smile on his face. When the few people from Wei clan walked into the hall, they happened to hear the man talking to Yan Dan with a voice that was as gentle as jade, without any impurities. Princess Zhonglu has reached the age of marriage. If we allow her to wander around aimlessly outside, it will damage the reputation of Great Yin Imperial Clan. Especially, if she follows Marquis Tianyan to a place like Sher Martial Club, where will the face of His Majesty and all the members of Imperial Clan be? How could a princess of Great Yin do something so outrageous? The man sighed lightly, picked up a bronze wine vessel, and emptied it in one gulp. After that, he continued in an indifferent tone. For now, we need to find a good candidate among all the nobles in the imperial court, and let Princess Zhonglu marry him. First, we need to establish the official status, then sever the relationship between Princess Zhonglu and some unruly men, so that she won't do anything that will embarrass Great Yin Dynasty in the future. Yan Dan frowned slightly, cupped his fist and bowed to the man. What the great editor said is absolutely right. But among all the nobles in the imperial court, who is the good candidate? The current great editor of Great Yin Dynasty, Yu Wendi, who had a great influence among all the civil ministers of Great Yin Dynasty, and also the birth father of Yu Qianqian, chuckled and said, "That will depend on His Majesty's decision. Great Yin Dynasty has so many nobles. Not to mention others, the youngest grandson of General Yu Yi, who is known as the Silver Flood Dragon, the fierce tiger of Qin clan from General Qin Wuyang's clan, the Qilin from General Fan Yuqi's clan, the youngest son of Lord Su Qin, Su Mai, who is known as the ever-changing Yin and Yang, are all good candidates. Betroth Princess Zhonglu to any one of them, it will be a good choice." Yan Dan lightly clapped his hands, nodded his head and praised. "What the great editor said is absolutely right. I, Rong Dan, will give this matter some careful consideration." Yu Wendi did not say another word. With a smile on his face, he filled up his wine vessel, raised it up and looked at the people of Wei clan, who were staring at the door with their mouths agape, and said, "Isn't it nice to have a friend coming from afar? Wei clan, no, it should be Lu clan. His Majesty of Great Yin Dynasty has been waiting here for a long time." Slowly, Yan Dan rose to his feet. Gray and white smoke rolled and rolled rapidly around his body, transforming into a dense cloud ball that spun at high speed like the Taiji symbol. He looked at the people of Wei clan, smiled and said, "You have come from afar. Yan Dan is sorry for not going out to welcome you. I wonder if old Mr. Lu Bui is doing well?" In Yan Dan's eyes, there was a gray and white airflow swirling at high speed as well. An immense pressure was exerted on the people of Wei clan, making them unable to move even a little bit. After being trapped at the peak of Jin Dan realm for nearly 2,000 years, Yan Dan had cultivated the reincarnation technique of 9 deaths and 9 lives, which was an extremely magical technique, allowing him to accumulate an enormous amount of core energies. Stimulated by Wu Qi's words, Yan Dan had broken through the bottleneck of Jin Dan realm, stepping into the nascent soul realm in one fell swoop. The core energies that he had accumulated for 2,000 years were like a tsunami, causing his cultivation base to break through to the peak stage of nascent soul realm. On top of that, the reincarnation technique of 9 deaths and 9 lives paid more attention to the tempering of one's nascent divinity. As a result, Yan Dan's divine will had been condensed to the point that it looked almost corporeal. When he unleashed the pressure, it made the people of Wei clan feel as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. Even the few earth immortals of nascent soul realm, who came along with them, were unable to breathe or move. Wei Xiaoxiao's father cried out sternly, "Yan Dan, how did you know the name of our patriarch?" Yan Dan smiled faintly, shook his head, sighed and said, "Not everyone under the heaven can keep their mouth shut. The few senior managers of your Wei merchant in G City, are not the kind of people who can face death with equanimity. Don't tell me I can't get any information out of them? He sneered, then a strange gleam flashed in Yin Dan's eyes. He stared at the people of Wei clan and cried out sternly, "Since you've come today, you can stay here forever." Suddenly, a grayish-white airflow rolled and rocked around him, transforming into a huge hand that measured over 100 feet in circumference, grabbing towards the people of Wei clan. An earth immortal of Wei clan took a step forward with blood bursting out from his 7 apertures. He cried out sternly, "Young master, retreat now. I, your old servant, will risk my life to stop this fiend. I hope young master can treat my descendants kindly. I'll be eternally grateful." A golden light burst out from his body, as this earth immortal had ignited his nascent soul. A tremendous force burst out from his body, transforming into a dazzling flame that shot straight towards Yin Dan. Yin Dan's huge hand was shattered, and the pressure from his divine will was shaken as well. Seizing the opportunity, the people of Wei clan retreated, but countless strong beams shot out from all directions, as a few layers of entrapment formations were suddenly activated. Chapter 182. While Yin Dan was setting up traps in Ji City to capture the people of Wei clan, Wuxia brought Meng Xiaobai and a few other men to the capital city of Gaoling Kingdom, Green Sun City. Behind the capital city was a small green mountain. The southern foot of the mountain spread out like an arm, and a fertile plain was created by the Silver Sand River. Green Sun City was located right on this plain. As the capital city of a vassal kingdom in the western border, the scale of Green Sun City was far smaller than Ji City. It measured less than 10 miles in both width and length, and together with a few satellite cities and nearly 100 villages outside the city, the population of the people living in this city was less than 1 million. Currently, these 1 million people were squeezed into Green Sun City. They were all given various weapons and armors, and recruited as soldiers to defend the city. Apart from the 1 million militia who had just been armed, there were also less than 37,000 elite soldiers of the Gaoling Kingdom. With the joint attack of the Lu Kingdom, Lishan Kingdom, and Tai clan, the army of over 100,000 soldiers of the Gaoling Kingdom, who were confronting the army of Lishan Kingdom at the Chonglang River, was routed overnight. The army was chased for over 1,000 miles, and only these 30,000 soldiers managed to escape back to Green Sun City. With the joint attack of the 3 forces, they had annexed 60% of the territory of the Gaoling Kingdom in just a few months. Now, as long as they could take down Green Sun City, the remaining territory of the Gaoling Kingdom would no longer have any barrier or defensive force, and the Gaoling Kingdom would become a name in history. Over the past few months, the emissaries of the Gaoling Kingdom had been desperately sending letters of complaint to Ji City, asking the suzerain to make a ruling on this matter. However, the person who was responsible for making the ruling on this matter, Lu Qingfeng, the emperor of Zhuguozheng of Great Yin Dynasty, was sitting in the camp of the allied forces. Most of the time, right after the emissaries of the Gaoling Kingdom sent their letters of complaint to Zhuguozheng, they would be ambushed and killed by the subordinates of Lu Qingfeng who stayed in Ji City. Currently, the Gaoling Kingdom had no fighting force on the inside, and no reinforcements on the outside. It was at the end of its rope. At the moment, the Gaoling Kingdom had over 500,000 soldiers besieged Green Sun City. Apart from the direction of Little Green Sun City in the north, the other 3 directions were completely surrounded. On top of that, these 500,000 soldiers were the most elite soldiers of the Lu Kingdom, Lishan Kingdom, and Tai clan. They were on a completely different level compared to the defeated soldiers and armed militia in Green Sun City. Wuxia met Lu Qingfeng at the top of a hill on Little Green Mountain, where he could overlook Green Sun City. The two of them were naturally happy to see each other again. After exchanging a few pleasantries, Lu Qingfeng explained the current situation to Wuxia. As Green Sun City was defending the city with all their might, Lu Qingfeng had already deployed a fire elemental great explosion formation near the city gate. Once it was triggered, the city gate would be blown up into the sky. But now, 7 Jin Dan human immortals from Celestial Spirit Sect suddenly appeared in Green Sun City. They claimed that they were taking a temporary rest in Green Sun City, but they had not left even after more than a month. These Jindan human immortals with ambiguous attitudes made Lu Qingfeng afraid to make a move. The armies of the Lu Kingdom, the Lishan Kingdom, and the Tai clan did not dare to attack the city. There were 7 Jindan human immortals in the city, not 7 Xiantian Taoists. If they were Xiantian warriors with the joint forces of 3 parties, they could easily crush 7 Xiantian warriors into pieces. But the Jindan human immortals were half-immortal existences, and they were the Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect, one of the 13 immortal Dao sects of Great Yin Dynasty. How could a few vassal kingdoms dare to offend them? As long as these 7 Jindan human immortals don't leave, the armies can't attack the city. Lu Qingfeng frowned, breathed out a long sigh and said, "The Lu Kingdom, the Lishan Kingdom, and the Tai clan do not have a strong foundation. The daily expenditure of 500,000 soldiers is a huge number. If they continue to besiege the city without attacking, the military expenditure will be too much for them to bear. I have no idea where these 7 rascals came from, and what are they doing here in Green Sun City?" Wuqi sneered and said coldly, "They are here to receive their great elder, Ling Wujiu. That is a smart move. Instead of receiving them openly in the Lu Kingdom, they chose to stay in the capital city of the Gaoling Kingdom, which is the closest city to Meng Mountains apart from the capital city of the Lu Kingdom. But too bad, their wishful thinking is not going to work now." After a brief moment of pondering, Wuqi looked at Lu Qingfeng, who had his head filled with confusion, and asked with a smile, "Is the hidden chess piece I asked you to prepare in place?" Lu Qingfeng nodded and said, 70,000 elite soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan have been lying in ambush in Little Green Mountain for 2 months. These barbarians are not easy to deal with. My grandfather has been colluding with them for a long time. This time, with the excuse you made up, he managed to borrow 70,000 elite soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan to attack the Gaoling Kingdom and divide the loot. These barbarians haven't seen enough gold, silver, and jewelry these days, and they are preparing to return home. Wuqi sneered, tilted his head up and said in a cold voice, "Returning home? How can it be so easy? According to the military law of Great Yin, killing barbarians is a meritorious deed. These 70,000 elite soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan were brought here by Wuqi, so that young master could earn a great meritorious deed, so that he could secure the throne of Zhuguozheng. Mobilize the elite soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan now. Order them to attack the city immediately. As for the 7 Jindan human immortals from Heavenly Spirit Sect, just leave them to me." Lu Qingfeng was struck dumb with astonishment. He stared blankly at Wuqi and cried out, "What did you just say?" Wuqi did not say a word. He pointed his finger out and unleashed the Heavenly Star positioning disc from his body. It transformed into a jade-colored disc and flew up into the sky, emanating wisps of sharp starlight that brightly illuminated the surroundings. Very soon, stern cries of rebuke echoed out from Green Sun City. 7 bright beams shot up into the sky at top speed, heading towards Wuqi. Wuqi cried out sternly, "Mobilize the elite soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan to attack the city. Once they and the defending army in Green Sun City are severely wounded, kill them all. The monarch of the Gaoling Kingdom has colluded with barbarians and harmed the surrounding vassal kingdoms. This crime must be pinned on the head of the royal family of the Gaoling Kingdom. I'll be bringing these 7 useless Jindan human immortals with me." Casually calling back the Heavenly Star positioning disc, Wuqi stepped on the sword beam and left. The sword of Greedy Wolf flew at an incredible speed. In just a blink of an eye, it had flown several dozens of miles away. The 7 bright beams followed closely behind Wuqi, not willing to let their guard down. In just the time of a few breaths, the few bright beams had vanished without a trace. A worried expression emerged on Lu Qingfeng's face as he looked at the direction where Wuqi disappeared. After that, he stamped his foot and cried out sternly, "Beat the drums, sound the bugle, raise the flame as the signal, order the 70,000 soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan to attack the city. Let Marquis Yuanyang send a messenger to tell those barbarians that once Green Sun City is breached, they will have the first pick of all the valuables, and all the women. Anything they fancy will be theirs." Upon hearing the order, all the captains surrounding Lu Qingfeng set out one after another. Marquis Yuanyang, Tai Kaishan had also immediately sent out his trusted messenger to the valley where the 70,000 soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan were hiding. A few months ago, Marquis Yuanyang had already sent out his absolute trusted messenger to inform the leader of Brotherhood of Mountains clan, who had a long history of friendship with him, inviting him to help him attack the Gaoling kingdom, and also promised him countless benefits. The leader of Brotherhood of Mountains clan and Marquis Yuanyang's clan had a friendship of over 200 years. As a result, their armors, weapons, provisions, and many other things were all supported by Marquis Yuanyang's clan. Naturally, all the rare and precious items produced in the mountainous area controlled by Brotherhood of Mountains clan would also be supplied to Marquis Yuanyang's clan. The friendship between both clans had a long history, and there was sufficient trust between them. Furthermore, both sides had obtained great benefits from this long history of friendship. Therefore, when Tai Kaishan's messenger left, Brotherhood of Mountains clan immediately sent out their entire clan, forming an army of 70,000 most elite young men, and joining the attack on the Gaoling kingdom. Right now, when Tai Kaishan's messenger left, all the elite soldiers of Brotherhood of Mountains clan who had been staying in the valley for a long time had rushed out in full force. Among the 70,000 barbarian soldiers, 30,000 of them rode on various wild beasts. Amidst the shrill sound of bugles, 30,000 riders took the lead, followed by 40,000 barbarian tribesmen. Mixed among them were nearly 2,000 barbarian beast warriors, who had faint gleams and shadows of wild beasts hovering behind their backs. Not even in their wildest dreams did they expect that right after the 7 human immortals of Jindan, the last barrier, had left, the enemy army had already begun to attack the city. But why was it not the army of Lu Kingdom, Lishan Kingdom, or Tai clan who came to attack, but these barbarians who had hideous tattoos all over their bodies? Between the Gaoling Kingdom and Meng Mountains was the Lu Kingdom. Unless the Lu Kingdom was completely wiped out by these barbarians, how could these barbarians appear before Green Sun City? No matter what the people of Gaoling Kingdom and Green Sun City were thinking, the barbarian soldiers had already begun to attack with all kinds of bizarre abilities. Poisonous prickles swept across the top of Green Sun City like a storm, killing tens of thousands of Gaoling Kingdom's militiamen on the wall. Their poisonous blood splashed and splashed in all directions, while their bodies quickly shrunk into tiny dark meatballs, looking extremely ferocious and frightening. Those militiamen, who had low morale, were thrown into a panic. Crying and wailing, they fled in all directions. It was a complete mess. Looking at the chaotic scene on the top of the city wall, the captain who commanded the soldiers of Brotherhood of Mountains clan let out a loud howl, ordering his men to rush up the city wall. Among those beast riders, there were several thousand of them who had an amazing jumping ability. With just one leap, they could reach the top of the city wall that was several tens of feet tall. Then, the beast riders rushed up the city wall, slaughtering all the soldiers of Gaoling Kingdom on top of the wall. Blood flowed like a river, and human heads rolled and rolled. On top of that, there were nearly 2,000 barbarian beast warriors. These were all formidable warriors who could rival Xiantian experts after activating their beast souls. With nearly 2,000 Xiantian warriors, Green Sun City no longer had the strength to resist. Perhaps those wealthy clans of Gaoling Kingdom who were hiding in Green Sun City could still gather quite a number of Xiantian warriors and Xiantian cultivators as sinecures, but these sinecures were used to protect their own lives. How could they let them fight on top of the city wall? Not long after that, the army of 70,000 barbarians had broken through the 4 city gates of Green Sun City and entered the city. The allied army of 3 forces, consisting of 500,000 soldiers, was quickly mobilized, surrounding Green Sun City from all directions. After that, with a thought in his mind, Lu Qingfeng performed an incantation gesture, triggering the many great explosive formations that had been lying in ambush near the city gate. A frightening explosion towered up into the sky. Flames and dust swept across the land for about 1 mile. Tens of thousands of barbarian soldiers and Gaoling Kingdom soldiers were caught in the explosion, dying tragically on the spot. A deafening war bugle rang out, as the allied army of 3 forces, consisting of 500,000 soldiers, charged into Green Sun City with the butcher's blades in their hands. Countless captains of the allied army were roaring and roaring amidst the crowd. The Gaoling kingdom has colluded with the barbarians and attacked our ally. They deserve to die 1,000 deaths. You can kill any man of great Yan. Kill, kill, kill. Break into Green Sun City and annihilate the Gaoling kingdom. Green Sun City was breached, and the royal family of Gaoling kingdom surrendered themselves to the enemy. But on the same night, because of an accident in the captive camp, the entire royal family of Gaoling kingdom was burned to a crisp. The enormous wealth accumulated by the Gaoling kingdom over the several hundred years of its establishment was divided equally among the three forces. The properties of the many influential and wealthy clans of Gaoling kingdom filled the pockets of the allied army of 500,000 soldiers, turning them into small rich men. While the people of Gaoling kingdom were wailing and wailing, the soldiers and civilians of the three forces were laughing joyfully. The gold mines on the Tsonglang River were taken over by the three forces, and the land of Gaoling kingdom was quickly dismembered, becoming the food for the three forces. A piece of land was taken away from the Lu kingdom, and together with the land they obtained from the Gaoling kingdom, Tai clan, Marquis Yuanyang, had established their own vassal kingdom, and quickly presented a letter of credence to the emperor of Zhuguozheng, Lu Chengfeng, declaring allegiance to Great Yan dynasty. In just 15 minutes, the Yuanyang kingdom established by Tai clan had completed all the legal procedures, becoming one of the over 100 vassal kingdoms of Great Yan dynasty. As long as Tai Kaishan paid a visit to Yandan and Ji City, Yuanyang kingdom would officially become a vassal kingdom of Great Yan dynasty. As for the Gaoling kingdom, what was the Gaoling kingdom? Had this vassal kingdom ever existed? Chapter 183. A very faint black beam streaked across the mountaintop like a mist. Those with weaker cultivation base could not even see the shadow of this black beam. Riding on the sword of Greedy Wolf, Wuxia sped back into the Meng Mountains where he had just come out from. Then he flew straight into the depths of Meng Mountains without bothering about anything. 7 dazzling beams, each measuring 30 to 50 feet long, followed behind Wuxia in an arrogant manner, looking like the rainbow after the rain. Their speed was slightly faster than Wuxia's, and they were getting closer to Wuxia at all times. However, it seemed like it would take them more than 20 hours of long-distance flight to catch up with Wuxia. The reason was that Wuxia's flying speed was just a tiny bit slower than them, an insignificant tiny bit. After flying several thousand miles into the depths of Meng Mountains, a furious roar was heard coming from one of the beams. "Hey, you, stop right now. How did you get your hands on the Heavenly Star Positioning Disc? If you don't tell me the truth, I'll spare your puny life." Without turning his head back, Wuxia cried out sternly, "Bullshit. Spare my puny life? Thank you, but no need. As long as your Lord Wuxia is not willing to give me my life, no one can take it away from me." Just like Ling Wujiu and the other 4 idiots, they failed to kill me, but were severely wounded by a group of demon beasts. Now they have become the lucky ones. Laughing strangely, Wuxia cried out again, "You bastards, stop chasing me. You can't catch up with me. Ha ha ha, Meng Mountains are filled with powerful demon beasts. They have no interest in me, a puny Xiantian Taoist, but they are very interested in the flesh and blood of Jindan human immortals. You are just a dish delivered to my doorstep. You better stop chasing me." Wuxia told the cultivators behind him not to give chase. However, would the 7 human immortals from Heavenly Spirit Sect, Jindan, give up? After Yandan brutally killed more than a dozen Jindan elders, the Heavenly Spirit Sect was exasperated and sent out 5 Jindan elders to kill Wuxia, the culprit. As a result, the 5 Jindan elders did not receive any news for a few months. That was why the 7 of them were sent out as reinforcements. He had waited in Green Sun City for a few months, but Ling Wujiu and the others did not return. Instead, he saw Wuxia carrying the Heavenly Star Positioning Plate and showing off his prowess. If they did not catch up with Wuxia and interrogate him about what had happened, how could these 7 human immortals of Jindan sect let him go? He had to catch up with Wuxia and tear him to pieces. Then he would use a secret technique to interrogate his soul and ask him what had happened. Ling Wujiu and the others were severely wounded by the demon beasts. That was the reason why Wuxia was able to take advantage of them. It sounded very reasonable, but these 7 immortals were not willing to believe it. 5 Jindan elders were not 5 ordinary disciples. The loss they suffered was too great. No matter whether what Wuqi said was true or not, they had to capture him alive. Otherwise, they would not be able to explain themselves when they returned. Of course, the temptation of the Heavenly Star Positioning Plate was too great. It was the cornerstone treasure of Heavenly Spirit Sect, and it had always been held in the hands of Ling Wujiu. Even the current sect leader could not lay his hands on it. If Ling Wujiu was really dead, the Heavenly Star Positioning Plate would belong to whoever snatched it back. Amidst one of the bright beams, the hoarse voice of an old lady echoed out abruptly, "Junior brothers, let's catch up and avenge senior brother Ling. The most important thing is to seize back the cornerstone treasure of our sect. As I am the oldest among all the disciples, I will keep the Heavenly Star Positioning Plate for the time being." Right after the old lady's voice faded, a cold snort was heard coming from the other 6 bright beams at the same time. Abruptly, the few bright beams sped up a little, chasing after Wuqi with a faint blood-red hue. After hearing the old lady's words, these people actually exercised a mystic technique and burned their blood essence, using the most damaging method to control the talisman treasures under their feet, chasing after Wuqi at the fastest speed. The old lady snorted coldly in anger. Hastily, she too sprayed out a mouthful of blood essence onto the talisman treasures under her feet, and increased the speed of the bright beam. Wuqi kept running crazily, purposely looking for the direction of those barren hills and unruly rivers. After running for another 2,000 miles, the 7 Jindan human immortals of Heavenly Spirit Sect were now less than 1,000 feet behind him. The energy ripples burst out from the 7 talisman treasures and surged toward him like a landslide or a tsunami. The tremendous energy ripples made the natural energy around Wuqi ripple, and the difficulty of his flight increased by a few times. "Have a taste of my magical treasures." Abruptly, Wuqi raised his right hand and threw 3 explosive talismans behind him. Upon hearing that, the 7 bright beams stopped abruptly. The talisman treasures quickly absorbed the natural energy from the surroundings, forming into a thick layer of defensive barrier around everyone's body. Countless streams of light were hovering in the air. Different-sized spell symbols were faintly discernible in the light screen. 3 small balls of fiery light exploded powerlessly on the defensive mechanism. They couldn't even create a slight ripple on the defensive mechanism transformed from the talisman treasure. For a long while, the 7 Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect did not say a word. After a full 2 breaths of time, the old lady roared furiously, "How dare you bully me, little boy? I was able to craft these explosive talismans when I was only 7 years old. And now, I'm over 700 years old. How dare you attack me with them? You are infuriating me." The 7 bright beams sped up and chased after Wuqi. Meanwhile, Wuqi was laughing all the way and said, 700 years old, and you are still a little Jindan elder? I heard that a Jindan human immortal only has a lifespan of 800 years. Unless he cultivates some special cultivation technique to prolong his lifespan, or takes some spirit pills that can prolong his lifespan. Otherwise, he will immediately kick the bucket when he reaches 800 years old. Old fool, doesn't that mean you are going to die soon? The old lady let out a hoarse and angry roar. The bright beam of her fleeing beam became more and more dazzling, as she chased after Wuqi like a shooting star. The other 6 Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect were worried that the old lady might gain some benefits and really allow her to seize the Heavenly Star Positioning Disc. Hastily, they coughed out a few mouthfuls of blood essence, activated their prime talisman treasures, and increased their speed by a few times. This was the disadvantage of the cultivation technique of Heavenly Spirit Sect. Although the talisman treasures were powerful, they consumed too much of their innate energy and energy essence. In order to catch up with Wuqi as soon as possible, they had consumed a huge amount of blood essence. Riding on the sword beam, he flew several dozens of miles forward. When he saw that the 7 strange beams were less than 300 feet away from him, he suddenly fished out several hundred explosive talismans from his storage ring. Using the most panicked and helpless voice that could only be uttered by a weak little girl who had bumped into several thousand perverts, he roared, "I'll fight you to the death. Look at the magical treasures. Look at the magical treasures. While shouting, "Look at the magical treasures," Wuqi kept throwing out explosive talismans one after another. He had bought quite a lot of these explosive talismans in Ji City, and Ling Wujiu and the others also had quite a few in their storage items. Therefore, even though Wuqi threw out 1 to 200 explosive talismans at a time, he did not feel any heartache at all. The few Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit sect sneered together. The sky was filled with water tank-sized fireballs produced by the explosions of these explosive talismans. But how could these fireballs hurt them? There were also a few Jindan elders who were showing off their attainments in talismans. With a light touch of their fingers, they completely destroyed several hundred explosive talismans. Before they could explode, the meridians of energy circulation in them had been completely destroyed, turning them into waste paper. A dark beam was seen flying at high speed in the front, followed by 7 bright beams. Between the two of them were countless exploding fireballs, and the occasional broken red specks. Amidst the loud rumbling noises, the group had come quite a distance away from Meng Mountains. Once again, Wuqi pulled out a great number of explosive talismans and threw them behind him, then roared, "Look at the magical treasures, look at the magical treasures. I have countless explosive talismans with me. Let's see how much energy you can use to resist them." The group of Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit sect kept sneering. Explosive talismans were the most basic offensive talismans. Unless there were tens of thousands of them exploding around them at the same time, how could they possibly hurt them? To them, these explosive talismans were just toys for children, and they were not even considered as toys. Just like what the old lady said, when she was 7 years old, she could already draw an explosive talisman. By the time Wuqi had thrown out over 3,000 explosive talismans, Wuqi's voice had turned hoarse. What he threw out was still an endless stream of explosive talismans, yet they did not even hurt the skin of those Jindan elders. Suddenly Wuqi halted his sword beams. He cried out with a stern voice, "I'll fight you to the death. Let me show you my strongest magical treasure, 30,000 explosive talismans. Do you think I can't kill all of you?" The group of Jindan elders of Heavenly Spirit sect burst into laughter. 30,000 explosive talismans? They were not afraid at all. When they saw Wuqi's sword beams halted, their eyes shone brightly. Wuqi must have run out of innate energy, and could no longer run away. As a junior of Xiantian realm, it was an extremely rare feat for him to fly over 10,000 miles with a sword, and he could be considered as having a vigorous innate energy. All 7 talisman treasures flashed with bright gleams at the same time. Without prior consultation, 7 Jindan elders exercised a restrictive technique and grabbed towards Wuqi, determined to capture him alive. Not only did they not take any precaution, they even put 99% of their attention on their fellow disciples. They wanted to capture Wuqi alive. And at the same time, they had to make sure that no one could capture Wuqi alive. Therefore, they did not pay any attention to Wuqi's little trick. Soundlessly, the cold electric mirror emerged behind Wuqi's back, and several hundred tiny electric arcs tore the void apart soundlessly. Amidst a faint gleam, the gold coin shot up into the sky, shooting out from the eye of the coin and piercing towards the talisman treasures beneath their feet, weakening the connection between their divine sense and talisman treasures. Amidst a blinding golden gleam, the gold ingot flew up into the sky, transforming into a small golden mountain, measuring several hundred feet in circumference, and smashed down from above. Although it weighed several 100,000 kilograms, it was still quite a deterrent. The strong wind brought up by the gold ingot made the clothes of the 7 elders flutter violently, while their bodies, together with their talisman treasures, were forced to descend by a few feet. After that, the sword of greedy wolf came whistling out. Accompanied by a jarring howl of a wolf, 7 pitch-black wolf heads opened their big mouths and bit towards the vital parts of the 7 elders. Finally, the silver lotus flew up soundlessly with an indescribable elegance, tightly wrapping around Wuqi and protecting him within its stamen. A soundless explosion rang out, as the bright light shrouding the 7 Jindan elders shattered abruptly. The electric arcs unleashed by the cold electric mirror had shattered their defensive light and ripped their bodies into pieces. 4 early-stage Jindan elders did not even have the chance to let out a snort before their bodies were ripped to shreds, leaving only 4 Jindan stones behind. A bright gleam shone from the gold ingot, as 6 talisman treasures fell quietly to the ground. The gold ingot came pressing down heavily. The other 3 Jindan elders, whose fleshly bodies only had a small part of their bodies ripped apart, let out a miserable howl as they were smashed down by the gold ingot. Apart from a skinny and withered old lady, the other 2 Jindan elders had more than half of their fleshly bodies ripped apart. The sword of Greedy Wolf thrust forward with a jarring whistle, wiping out the blood and chi essence of 6 Jindan elders, who had their fleshly bodies ripped apart. 6 Jindan stones were rolled up by the sword beam, falling into Wu Qi's hand. At this moment, the attacks unleashed by the few talisman treasures finally landed on Wu Qi's body, but they were firmly blocked by the silver lotus. None of them could hurt even a single hair of his. Wu Qi flew up and came next to the old lady, who was now covered in blood and screaming in fear. Casually, he performed a hand incantation gesture and completely sealed off her cultivation base. Casually, he brought the 7 talisman treasures into his storage ring. Then Wu Qi gave the old lady a series of slaps. "All right, when you were chasing after me just now, you didn't look so panicked." Coldly, Wu Qi stared at the old lady, who had a gloomy and unsightly face and a pair of eyes filled with an evil gleam. Shaking his head, he sneered and said, "I only have one question for you. Who constructed the teleportation formation that you used?" The old lady stared at Wu Qi for a while, then breathed out a heavy sigh and said, "Spare me a thread of my soul for reincarnation, and I'll tell you the truth." Wu Qi pondered for a brief moment, then nodded and said, "Fine." Who constructed the second teleportation formation of Great Yan Dynasty? The old lady stared at Wu Qi coldly, sneered and said, "Myriad Dao Alliance. If you have the ability, go and find them." Wu Qi was struck dumb. Myriad Dao Alliance, what kind of organization was this? Chapter 184. After tidying up the belongings of 7 Jindan human immortals, emptying 7 storage rings and hanging them around his neck, Wu Qi flew out of Meng Mountains on his flying sword, heading to Green Sun City to meet up with Lu Chengfeng. Green Sun City had been completely wiped out, and a new grand city would be built here. In the future, it would be the capital city of Tai Clan's Yuanyang Kingdom. According to the agreement made by the 3 kingdoms, the Lu Kingdom and Lishan Kingdom would bear 70% of the cost of building the new city. Wu Qi helped Lu Chengfeng with some affairs for a few days, and when everything was settled, the company took a detour to the capital city of Lu Kingdom, returning to Great Yan Dynasty with the teleportation formation there. At this point in time, Great Yan Dynasty had begun to use the spatial breaching spirit gold in the teleportation formations of various vassal kingdoms. When Wu Qi and his company returned to Ji City, the amount of natural energy consumed by the teleportation formation had been reduced by 100 times. As a result, the teleportation formation, which consisted of several thousand people, did not need to replace any energy stones. When they walked out from the teleportation formation located in the southwestern barbican of the Imperial Palace of Ji City, a heavy snow was falling from the sky. The snowflakes kept falling onto Wu Qi's body and head, and the cool snowflakes made Wu Qi's spirit feel refreshed. He took a deep breath and breathed out a mouthful of baiqi, sending it flying far away. While he was inhaling and exhaling, Wu Qi quickly ran his eyes over those Jindan human immortals who were on duty in the barbican. Just as he expected, when these Jindan human immortals saw Lu Chengfeng and his company, their expressions turned normal. But when a few of them saw Wu Qi, their faces turned stiff abruptly. Some of them even tried to suppress their emotions, but still, Wu Qi could clearly sense the killing intent in their hearts. According to the old lady from Heavenly Spirit Sect, who was captured alive and interrogated by Wu Qi, these Jindan human immortals should be the people from Myriad Dao Alliance of Great Yan Dynasty. They should know that Heavenly Spirit Sect had sent Elder Jindan to hunt down Wu Qi. Therefore, when they saw Wu Qi return to Ji City safe and sound, they were so surprised, and revealed a murderous intent toward Wu Qi. Myriad Dao Alliance was a loose alliance formed by the strongest group of cultivators from 13 immortal Dao sects of Great Yin Dynasty, putting aside the heaven-breaking sword sect, which was established only 600 years ago. A few of the 13 immortal sects of Great Yin Dynasty were established since the founding of Great Yin Dynasty. Over 2,000 years was more than enough for these sects to cultivate a large number of earth immortals of nascent soul realm. According to the law of Great Yin Dynasty, when a new earth immortal of nascent soul realm was born in any sect, he or she would have to leave his or her original sect and join the Cloud Swallow Pavilion of Great Yin Dynasty, becoming a sinecure of the imperial clan of Great Yin Dynasty. According to the way Great Yin Dynasty strictly controlled the immortal sects, among these earth immortals, 60% of them had the bloodline of Great Yin Dynasty's imperial clan. Therefore, they were easy to control. Meanwhile, among the other 40%, over 20% came from the clans of Jingku, Qin Wuyang, Gao Jianli, and some other influential ministers. Their loyalty was beyond doubt. However, there were still nearly 20% of earth immortals who did not belong to the imperial clan, nor did they come from influential clans. Just like Nye Yaonu, her childhood sweetheart and first love who died inexplicably, these earth immortals were born as commoners. However, because of their outstanding innate talent in cultivation, they were chosen to join the immortal Dao sects. In their sects, they were often suppressed by their fellow disciples who came from the imperial clan and influential clans. Some of them were even nearly assassinated. After going through untold hardships and attaining the cultivation base of earth immortals, these people were all men with unswerving willpower and outstanding innate talent. It was imaginable how difficult it was for Great Yin Dynasty to completely control these people. Although these people had left their own sects, there were always disciples who had a close relationship with them. How could Great Yin Dynasty possibly take away the relationship of a master and a disciple? These earth immortals who were discontented with Great Yin Dynasty had banded together and formed a semi-public alliance of cultivators, the Myriad Dao Alliance. Generally speaking, the higher-ups of Great Yin Dynasty, including Yandan, were happy to see the existence of the Myriad Dao Alliance. In many ways, this loose alliance had played a positive role for Great Yin Dynasty. However, there was always a shadow under the bright sunlight. No one knew what those earth immortals in the Myriad Dao Alliance were thinking. The second set of teleportation formations that densely covered all vassal kingdoms of Great Yin Dynasty was secretly constructed by some powerful, influential, and powerful earth immortals from the Myriad Dao Alliance. Yandan and the others knew about the existence of this second set of teleportation formations, but they had no way of controlling it. These teleportation formations were located in remote and desolate places outside all the major cities of Great Yin Dynasty, and their locations would change from time to time. Even with the all-pervasive methods of Scouting Office, Swallow, and many other secret organizations, they still could not find out the operation method of this teleportation formation system. All earth immortals of nascent soul realm possessed the ability to search one's soul. Therefore, it was impossible for them to find out the truth even if they sent some undercover agents. When Wuxia stepped forward and annihilated Wei Merchant, he had destroyed a major source of wealth for Heavenly Spirit Sect. Not only had he offended the current sect leader and many elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect, he had also angered some earth immortals from Heavenly Spirit Sect. Furthermore, among the 13 Jin Dan sect elders who were killed, 2 of them were the direct bloodline descendants of some earth immortals who stayed in Heavenly Spirit Sect. As a result, this gruesome debt of blood was placed on Wuqi's head. Faced with the confession of the old lady, Wuxia could only raise his head and look into the sky. The heaven was speechless. There was no rumbling thunder in winter or snowfall in June, and no one was crying out for Wuxia. Yandan had forcefully pushed the credit of annihilating Wei Merchant onto Wuqi's head. Therefore, he had no choice but to take the blame, even if he did not want to. After all, those earth immortals of Myriad Dao Alliance did not have the confidence to challenge the entire Great Yin Dynasty represented by Yandan. But strangling Wuxia to death was just like playing a game. That was the reason why Ling Wujiu and 5 other Jin Dan sect human immortals went after Wuxia with their sect guarding treasure. As a result, The teleportation formation of Myriad Dao Alliance was open to them. And that was the reason why Wuxia was besieged by Jin Dan sect human immortals in the depth of Meng Mountains. If not for the fact that Wuxia had countless trump cards, he would have long been crushed into ashes. Looking at the few Jin Dan sect human immortals who had an unsightly expression on their faces, Wuqi's mind was filled with all sorts of thoughts. After a long while, Wuxia suddenly screamed, "I demand an audience with His Majesty. I demand an audience with His Majesty. Your humble servant, Wuxia, Marquis Tianyan, requests an audience with His Majesty." Wuxia roared at the top of his voice. With his current cultivation base, the rolling sound waves spread across the entire imperial palace in an instant, shaking the walls of the Barbican and sending the thick layer of snow on the ground flying far away. Chaos ensued everywhere. From the top of the city wall, the watchtowers and the turrets, countless powerful bows and crossbows were aimed at Wuxia, while several dozens of Jin Dan Imperial Guards flew up into the sky on their flying swords. One of them, a peak-level Imperial Guard of Jin Dan sect, clad in the uniform of an Imperial eunuch, snapped sternly, "How dare you? Do you know where this place is? Is it a place where you can shout and shout?" On the other side, another Imperial Guard of Jin Dan sect pointed his finger at Wuxia and roared furiously, "Somebody, arrest this lawless Marquis Tianyan, who dares to disturb His Majesty. According to the law of Great Yen, he will be beaten 300 times with a stick. What a bastard! How dare a mere Marquis Tianyan act so presumptuously in the imperial palace?" Wuxia gave the two eunuchs a glare. Then he mustered all his energy, and under the panicked gazes of Lu Qingfeng and the others, he roared out word by word. "Duqin Iron Armor Ingzheng, Duqin Army's Grand Marshal, Wu Wang Baiqi, Duqin's Chief Minister, Su Fu, Duqin's Prime Minister, Li Si, Duqin's Generals Wang Jian Li Xian." The two Jin Dan sect eunuchs who were flying on their flying swords became more and more furious, and at the same time more panicked. They pointed their fingers at Wuxia and roared furiously, How presumptuous! You, what kind of nonsense are you talking about? Marquis Tianyan, are you out of your mind, or have you lost your mind? Somebody bring Marquis Tianyan down. Bring him down. Give him 300 beatings, then find a doctor." Before the scolding of two eunuchs could fade away, a strong gust of wind rolled up from the ground. Yan Dan, Jingku, Gao Jianli, and all the core members of Great Yan Dynasty appeared in the Barbican. Ma Yi, who was following closely behind Yan Dan, threw a sideways glance at the two Jin Dan sect eunuchs hovering in midair, then cried out sternly, "Get your asses down here. What are you doing up there? Enforce a curfew, and don't allow any unauthorized people to enter or leave this place. Anyone who dares to intrude will be killed." A large group of secret agents of Great Yan Dynasty, who were under the direct control of Gao Jianli, arrived at the Barbican. They replaced the guards and took over the defense of the Barbican. Apart from Wuxia and Lu Qingfeng, all the other attendants were driven out of the Barbican. When the surrounding area was cleared, Yan Dan came before Wuxia. With a gloomy face, he stared at him and cried out in a low voice, "What did you say just now? Wuxia, you little rascal, what nonsense are you talking about? You've been away for a few months, and what have you encountered? Are you really suffering from hysteria, or what?" Yan Dan's body was trembling. He clenched his fists tightly and fixed his eyes on Wuxia. A tremendous pressure was bursting out from his body. Standing next to him, Lu Qingfeng had already dropped to his knees and bowed respectfully to Yan Dan. Meanwhile, Wuxia rolled his eyes and stared at Yan Dan, clenched his jaws and raised a finger. "Unless your majesty can guarantee the absolute safety of Wuxia in Great Yan, Wuxia knows nothing. What Ingzheng? What Nine Dragons Cauldron Grand Magic? What Bone Horn of Ing Dragon? What Water Spirit Cauldron the Great?" Yan Dan was stunned. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times, then he said coldly, "Who wants to kill you?" Wuxia looked at Yan Dan and snorted coldly, "I don't know who wants to kill me in Myriad Dao Alliance, but Heavenly Spirit Sect has sent someone to hunt down Wuxia. I believe your majesty does not know about this, but I hope something like this will not happen again in the future." Without being urged by Yan Dan, Wuqi used the most concise words to tell Yan Dan about how he was hunted down by the elders of Heavenly Spirit sect in Meng Mountains. Of course, he used the spring and autumn period technique to omit a lot of shameful things, such as his secret palace, and so on. Looking at Yan Dan, who had an unsightly expression on his face, he said coldly, "No matter what, Wuqi has made so many meritorious deeds, and is even conferred the title of Marquis Tianyan by your majesty. Not only that, his fief has been increased, and now, he owns 300 cities south of Huaiyang. Elder Jin Dan of Heavenly Spirit sect is hunting me. And the nascent soul patriarch of Myriad Dao Alliance also wants my life. I fear that I will be strangled to death by those earth immortals, once I step out of the imperial palace. Therefore, I can only beg your majesty to save me." Yan Dan pondered for a brief moment, then nodded his head, smiled and said, "Heavenly Spirit sect is so audacious to hunt you down. This is the first time I've heard about this. Don't worry, no matter who is the one who has deceived me and kept me from knowing about this, I'll find him and uphold justice for you. But how did you escape from the pursuit of 12 human immortals of Jin Dan?" Without wasting any time, Wuqi took out the medallion given to him by Wanying Dragon King, and handed it over to Yan Dan. Sure enough, Yan Dan could recognize this medallion. He laughed and said, "So you are the old dragon who refused to take the position of Great Yin Dynasty's sinecure. Hee, I don't need to tell you. Was he the one who helped you kill those people from Heavenly Spirit sect? I understand now." Wuqi was laughing in his mind. "You should know this yourself, but Wuqi never told me that." After a brief moment of pondering, Yan Dan nodded his head and said, "I understand the cause and effect of this incident. I'll personally warn some people, and they will never touch even a single hair of yours again. Now let's talk about that Zhang." Yan Dan fixed his eyes on Wuqi, while Jing Ku, Gao Jianli, and a few others strode up to him. Like a pack of ferocious wild cats, they surrounded Wuqi, the little mouse. The eyes of these few core members of Great Yin Dynasty were glowing green, and they were emanating an abnormal and bizarre aura. Not daring to waste any more time, Wuqi hastily told them the cause and effect of the incident. Of course, he still omitted most of the truth with the style of the spring and autumn period, but only highlighted how he had racked his brains, using the conflict between Qin army and Wanying Dragon King, to kill a great number of Qin soldiers and severely injuring Zhang. Yan Dan stared blankly at Wuqi, then asked hurriedly, "Did you really severely injuring Zhang? And even wiped out his army of over 100,000 soldiers?" Wuqi kept nodding his head, hastily swearing a few vicious oaths, then said with a little shyness, "Everything is true. It's just that I didn't contribute much in this incident, as it was all Wanying Dragon King's effort. TSK, over 1 million aquatic demons from Longyuan River have been killed or wounded. What a miserable fate." Yan Dan let out a wild laugh. He reached out his hand and forcefully poked Wuqi's chest, laughed out loud and said, "Announce the decree. Wuqi will be promoted to the title of Duke of Tianyan. Announce the decree. Whoever kills 10,000 soldiers of Qin army will be conferred the title of Marquis, and whoever kills 100,000 soldiers of Qin army will be conferred the title of Duke. Those who severely injure the emperor and his ministers of Qin army, and those who kill the famous generals and ministers of Qin army will be rewarded handsomely." Wuqi immediately stuck out his chest. He was conferred the title of Duke just like that. Chapter 185. Surprisingly, Yan Dan had held a private banquet to celebrate the victory of Wuqi and Lu Qingfeng. Not many people attended the banquet, but all of them were the core ministers of Great Yin Dynasty. The first reason for the celebration was the intelligence brought back by Wuqi. Yan Dan did not take the loss of Qin army seriously, as the death of over 100,000 soldiers could not affect the strength of Daqin Dynasty. Therefore, Yan Dan did not take this army seriously either. What he valued the most was the intelligence brought back by Wuqi regarding the Qin army. The cultivation technique cultivated by Ying Zheng, the magical treasures owned by Ying Zheng, and the various divine abilities and magical spells possessed by the generals and ministers of Qin army. This intelligence was the main reason why Yan Dan conferred the title of Duke to Wuqi, and gave him 1/5 of the counties located at the southern bank of Huaiyang as his fief. Yingzheng knew nothing about the situation of all the generals and ministers of Great Yin Dynasty, but Great Yin Dynasty had already learned all kinds of information about him. In terms of strategy, Yingzheng was one step ahead. As for Lu Qingfeng's meritorious deed of wiping out 70,000 barbarians from Brotherhood of Mountains clan, and eradicating the Gao Ling kingdom who had colluded with barbarians, they were not bad in comparison. However, when compared with the meritorious deed of Wuxia, they were somewhat overshadowed. Yan Dan only praised Lu Qingfeng a little, letting him secure the position of Zhuo Guozheng, and that was all. After drinking for half the night, Yan Dan summoned all the ministers to discuss various countermeasures against Daqin dynasty. As Wuxia and Lu Qingfeng did not have the status, they did not have the qualification to attend such a meeting. Therefore, they obediently returned to their mansion. However, Wuxia was accompanied by 2 more men, Xiong and Xiong. These 2 brothers were the eldest and second uncle of Xiong and his brothers. They possessed the cultivation base of nascent soul realm, and were low-grade spirit beasts who had awakened the unique bloodline of iron-boned bear of earth. Although they only possessed the cultivation base of early-stage nascent soul realm, they were strong enough to fight against ordinary mid-stage nascent soul human cultivators. They were the personal guards assigned by Yan Dan to Wuxia and Lu Qingfeng. It had been less than a year since Wuxia came to Ji City, and he had offended many enemies. Some of them came out of nowhere, which made Yan Dan a little embarrassed. That was why he assigned Xiong and Xiong to Wuxia. It was a quiet night. Wuxia slept soundly in his own abode. Only then did he rise to his feet, and only then did he rise slowly. After that he Wuxia a few days Wuxia, washed in Wu. Who was he? Wu he had Zhang Palace Yan and Lu, who was and had not. Wu Wuqi's Wu, and Lu. Wu Wuqi had. It had been a few months since he last saw Zhang Lu. Firstly, Wuqi was afraid that Zhang Lu would flip out, and secondly, he was starting to miss her. Escorted by a group of demon bears and a large group of guards, right when Wuqi arrived at the entrance of the Duke Mansion, he saw Hai Yuntian, who was clad in a green outfit, sticking his head out and peering at them from across the street. Obviously, Hai Yuntian wanted to come closer to them, but he didn't have the courage to loiter in front of Duke Yanli's mansion. Therefore, he squatted on the opposite side of the street. Wuqi stared at Hai Yuntian with surprise, quickly waved his hand and said, "Hai Yuntian, what are you doing over there? Didn't I tell you to look for me in Duke Yanli's mansion if you need anything? Why don't you squat in the gatehouse and wait for me? Why are you standing there in a daze?" Seeing that Wuqi had recognized him, Hai Yuntian ran over excitedly. Without hesitation, he bowed at Wuqi and said, "Marquis, you're finally back. I've been looking for you a few times these days, but you're not around. Today is the last day of the Rare Treasures Conference, and that's why I'm here looking for you. The rules of the Duke Mansion are very strict. How could I dare to stand guard in there?" Wuqi smiled, patted on Hai Yuntian's shoulder and said, "It's my fault. I've not been in Ji City for the past few days, and I've forgotten to tell them to explain to you. What is this Rare Treasures Conference? What does it mean by the last day?" Hai Yuntian hurriedly smiled and said, "This Rare Treasures Conference is an incredible event. You're a cultivator, and this Rare Treasures Conference is a conference that specializes in auctioning all kinds of rare and precious treasures that can be used by cultivators, and also some rare and precious items that we can't identify. It only happens once every 10 years, and each conference lasts for 1 month. Today is the last day, and it's also the best day to auction all kinds of rare and precious items." Wuqi was startled. Then he quickly asked Hai Yuntian for the details. Only now did he know that although there was a market of 4 seas in Ji City that sold all the rare and precious items under the heaven, it was mainly targeted at ordinary merchants and those itinerant cultivators who didn't belong to any sects or sections. There were many rare and precious items that were sold there, but the true supreme-grade rare and precious items could only be found in the Rare Treasures Conference that was held once every 10 years. In the Rare Treasures Conference, all the merchants, influential clans, immortal sects, and powerful cultivators of Great Yin Dynasty would participate in this conference that was held once every 10 years. Some rare and precious items that couldn't be found in the market of four seas would only appear in the Rare Treasures Conference. In the last Rare Treasures Conference, one of the most precious treasures was an acquired spirit pearl condensed from gold element energies. In the end, it was exchanged by the general of Great Yin Dynasty, Yue, with 30 cities as his fief. Wuqi's eyes lit up. He already had the acquired spirit fire bead, and the acquired water bead, and now he had another acquired spirit bead condensed from the gold element qi. Didn't the heavens want him to gather a set of acquired 5 elemental treasures? Had General Yue bought this acquired spirit pearl? Wuqi immediately felt relieved. When he was free, he would pay a visit to Yue's house. It would be a waste to keep this precious pearl that was worth 30 cities in his hands. He hesitated for a brief moment. Then Wuqi nodded his head and said, "You do remember my words. Don't forget to inform me when there's good news." "TSK, I was planning to visit Princess Zhongli, but it doesn't matter if I'm late by one day. Where is the Rare Treasures Conference? Quick, bring me there." Hai Yuntian quickly nodded and bowed. Wuqi asked someone to prepare a mount for him. Then he followed Hai Yuntian and rushed towards the venue of the Rare Treasures Conference. The Rare Treasures Conference was jointly organized by Great Yin Dynasty, 13 immortal Dao sects, various influential clans, and the largest merchant. The tax that was paid for this Rare Treasures Conference that was held once every 10 years was an astronomical figure. Naturally, a grand conference like this would not be held in a small space within Ji City. Instead, it would be held in a special venue, 80 miles away from the east gate of Ji City. Surrounded by a few small mountains, there was an exquisite and beautiful lake. Right in the middle of the lake, a 3-storied platform made of white jade was built. This platform was the venue of the Rare Treasures Conference. Surrounding the lake, a great number of exquisite pavilions and houses were built halfway up the surrounding hills. These pavilions and houses could accommodate several tens of thousands of people, and were used for the distinguished guests of the Rare Treasures Conference to bid for the items. In every pavilion and house, there was a specially crafted formation that allowed the distinguished guests to have a clear look at the items being auctioned on the platform, and they could press the button on the formation to increase the price of the items. If the distinguished guests had any questions about the items being auctioned, they could even go up the platform and inspect the items. Cultivators could fly to the center of the lake on their own flying swords, while ordinary people could be fetched by ferries. Everything was very convenient. Along the way, Wuqi and his company were listening to Hai Yuntian introducing all kinds of secrets and interesting news to them. Very soon, they arrived at the venue of the Rare Treasures Conference. After going through a series of strict inspection, Wuqi was sent to a small mountain located on the east side of the lake. It was a distinguished guest house specially reserved for Duke Yanli's mansion. The organizer of the Rare Treasures Conference was well informed. He knew about the relationship between Wuqi, the newly promoted Duke of Tianyuan, and Lu Qingfeng. Therefore, he directly sent Wuqi to this lofty and luxuriously furnished abode, which had 3 floors and 3 buildings on the left and right. Standing on the highest floor of the abode, which measured several tens of feet in both width and length, and was covered with a thick carpet made of pure wool, one could overlook the white jade platform in the center of the lake. The small-scale formation used for the auction was hovering right in the middle of the terrace, and could move according to the will of the guests. On the outer shell of the small-scale formation, which was forged with purple gold, there were 5 buttons made from 5 colored crystals, representing the increment of 1,000 gold coins, 10,000 gold coins, 100,000 gold coins, 1 million gold coins, and 10 million gold coins respectively. If the owner of the treasure couldn't be decided even after the increment of 10 million gold coins was raised, the guest could press a button made from a black crystal next to it, and contact the host of the auction directly. Then the host could use an orvane, a city, or even a piece of land to trade for the treasure. Listening to Hai Yuntian introducing the rules of the auction and the value of those crystals, Wuqi couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat from his back. With his little wealth, what could he buy in this place? After glancing around for a while on the terrace, Wuqi found out that all the pavilions around this abode belonged to those top-notch nobles of Great Yin Dynasty. On the left was the abode owned by Duke Yanxi, the right supervisor of Great Yin Dynasty. A little further up, on a hillside about 200 feet higher than Wuqi's abode, was the abode owned by Prince of Ren, Yin Xianqian. While listening to Hai Yuntian introducing the ownership of the abodes nearby, Wuqi suddenly saw Princess Zhonglu walking slowly towards him, surrounded by a group of palace guards. She looked a little haggard. Surrounded by a group of palace guards, she was walking slowly towards him. Wuqi was struck with great joy. Without hesitation, he sprung into the air, kicked the bamboo with the tip of his feet, and leaped towards Princess Zhonglu like a gust of wind. When he was still several hundred feet away from Princess Zhonglu and the people around her had raised their heads up. When they saw that it was Wuqi, all the palace guards who were about to draw their blades stopped their attacks. Suddenly, a joyful look emerged on Princess Zhongli's haggard face, and a smile that she couldn't conceal emerged on her face. But in the blink of an eye, she clenched her jaws, stomped her feet, placed both hands on her waist, and stared at Wuqi with her puffed nose and glared at him. She put on an expression that said, "I'm very angry, and you can do whatever you want to do to make me happy." Wuqi chuckled and was about to greet Princess Zhonglu, but suddenly, a faint dragon roar was heard. Suddenly, a handsome young man came out from behind Princess Zhonglu. He was clad in a white battle robe embroidered with hundreds of patterns, a silver bone pishio crown on his head, and a pair of white rhinoceros leather boots. His face looked like a silver basin, his eyes bright like the stars, and his entire body was covered with a layer of snow white, so white that it was dazzling to look at. He thrust his spear towards Wuqi's chest. The young man cried out sternly, "How dare you assassinate the princess of Great Yin Dynasty?" The silver spear moved like a bolt of lightning, measuring 18 feet long and as thick as a chicken. 9 tiny flood dragons were coiling around its surface, intertwining with each other. The tip of the spear was extremely sharp. A faintly discernible silver gleam shot out a few feet from the tip of the spear, accompanied by a whistling sound that made one's eardrums ache. Almost at the same time when the spear was thrust out, it had arrived before Wuqi. The spear left a several hundred feet long silver beam in the air. The tip of the spear nearly pierced through Wuqi's body, while the tail of the silver beam was still coiling in front of Princess Zhonglu. The eyes of the handsome young man who thrust out the spear were cold and gloomy. Together with the spear, he leaped and came before Wuqi, thrusting both fists towards Wuqi's body. One fist went straight towards Wuqi's chest, while the other went straight into his dantian. It was obvious that he wanted to kill Wuqi with a single strike. A spear and a pair of fists brought up a strong wind that shattered the surrounding bamboo forest. The long bamboo fibers darted across the sky, piercing through the air like arrows. Wuqi retreated hastily, cursing furiously. "Where did this mad dog come from? How dare you bite me in broad daylight?" The silver spear and the pair of fists followed closely behind Wuqi's body. "I'm Yusu, the lineal grandson of Chief General Yue. People call me Silver Flood Dragon. How dare you, assassin? Bow down and die now." Wuqi's face turned cold. He snorted coldly and said, "Yuyi's lineal grandson? Get lost now." Abruptly, Wuqi's body fell backward, then he gave a powerful kick with his right leg. After being tempered in the depths of Meng Mountains, and having absorbed a part of Catfish Flood Dragon's blood essence, the strength of Wuqi's fleshly body had gone far beyond Yusu's imagination. His movement was frighteningly fast, like an antelope hanging its horns, and without a trace, he thrust his leg out and smashed it viciously on Yusu's lower abdomen. A miserable howl rang out, and blood sprayed in all directions. Chapter 186. The sound of the blade piercing through the flesh was rather jarring to the ears. The silver spear had pierced through Wuqi's left shoulder, causing blood to spray out from the tip of the spear, and stain it with the color of blood. Wuqi howled and howled in pain, his right palm tightly gripping the silver spear in his left shoulder as he staggered back a long distance. Meanwhile, Yusu's lower abdomen was kicked by Wuqi, and his dantian was cracked open by Wuqi. Innate energies that nearly condensed into Jin Dan burst out from the cracks, and half of his cultivation base was crippled by Wuqi's kick. He didn't even have the time to let out a snort. and a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. Then, like a scarecrow, he was sent flying more than 100 feet away, crushing several bamboos in a sorry state. His body rolled down the hillside where the bamboo forest was located. Princess Zhonglu narrowed her eyes, revealing her 2 little canine teeth as she smiled happily. A dozen captains clad in silver battle robes strode out from behind Princess Zhonglu, shouting at the top of their voices, "How dare you hurt our young master? How dare you?" Wuqi tightly gripped the silver spear in his shoulder and cried out at the top of his voice, "Somebody! Assassins! Assassins! Kill all these assassins who dared to hurt me! Kill them, capture the culprit alive, and send him to the imperial palace to be punished." 2 wild gusts of wind shot out from the abode behind. Xiongjin and Xiongyin were seen flying towards Wuqi, bringing with them a billowing demon wind. Amidst the pitch-black demon wind, 4 huge bare paws, about 10 feet in circumference and glinting with a faint metallic luster, swooped down and crushed a dozen white-robed captains into meat patties while howling miserably. It was a real meat patty, one that did not contain even a single drop of blood. All the blood had been forced out of their bodies by the huge explosive force. The blood splashed hundreds of feet away, and only pieces of thin skin stuck to the ground. Everyone was staring at Wuqi, who was screaming miserably, and Xiongjin and Xiongyin, who were covered in blood, with shocked eyes. After a long while, a middle-aged scholar clad in a white robe stepped out from behind Princess Zhonglu, his body trembling. Pointing his finger at Wuqi, he snapped, "How dare you? Our young master is the grandson of General Yu Yusu. They are the family guards of the chief general." The golden bear rolled its eyes and let out a fierce roar towards the middle-aged scholar. He roared, "What bullshit, great general's grandson? We only saw that Duke of Tianyun, whom we were protecting under imperial orders, was assassinated and seriously injured by you. We are Swallow Cloud Pavilion's gold medal consecrators, Xiongjin and Xiongyin. We have a chance to fight this lawsuit. Xiongqing, tie up these bastards for me." Xiongqing and his brothers howled as they charged forward with a large bundle of rope tied with cow tendons. They bowed respectfully to Princess Zhonglu, then grabbed the middle-aged scholar and gave him a brutal beating. After that, they tied him up like a rice dumpling with the rope. Even Yusu, who was knocked unconscious by Wuqi's kick, was tied up tightly by a few big bears. Casually dragging the end of the rope, Xiongqing and his brothers rode on a demon cloud and kicked up a demon wind, rushing towards the imperial palace of Great Yan. Xiongjin and Xiongyin stared coldly at the few young men who followed closely behind Princess Zhonglu and said in a cold voice, "Duke of Tianyun is a duke conferred by His Majesty last night. Just now, that little rascal dared to injure Duke of Tianyun in public. Putting aside the dignity of His Majesty, we brothers cannot afford to lose that face. So what if he is Yu Yi's grandson? We, the Black Wind Valley of Meng Mountains, will not care about this little rascal." The few young men standing behind Princess Zhonglu had their faces filled with anger, and they even had a strange gloating expression on their faces, as well as some other strange expressions. But when they heard the roars of Xiongjin and Xiongyin, their faces fell instantly. Obviously, they were very afraid of the Black Wind Valley of Meng Mountains. They exchanged a glance, then Qiqi bowed his head and did not give Wuqi another look. Wuqi swayed and pulled out the silver spear from his shoulder. A few secret agents of scouting office quickly came over and applied some ointment on his wound, then tied it up tightly with bandages. Wuqi kept screaming and grimacing in pain, his face turning blue. Never in his wildest dreams did he expect that after he possessed the Dharma body of an earth immortal, it would be so painful when he tore his fleshly body apart with a mystic technique. It was as if several hundred heavy axes were chopping viciously on his shoulder. If not for the fact that he tore his fleshly body apart and created a wound on his shoulder that was twice the size of the silver spear, how could Yusu, who had yet to form his gold core, and was only carrying an upper-grade magical spear, break his fleshly body? There were so many witnesses at the scene, and they all saw Yusu piercing his shoulder with the spear. Therefore, they decided to let him be the scapegoat. Weighing the 360-kilogram silver spear in his hand, Wuqi sneered. Although the silver spear was only an upper-grade magical item, during the crafting process, It was obvious that some techniques of lower-grade magical treasures were used as reference. The silver spear felt cold to the touch, and once it was waved, it would shoot out a piercing cold air to hurt the enemy. If used in a battlefield, this silver spear had the magical effect of freezing the enemy in a large area. An upper-grade magical item like this could be considered as a rare and exquisite product, and it could fetch quite a high price in the market. Turning his head and nodding at Yen Bugue, who was following behind him, Wuqi sneered and said, "Everyone has seen it. This is the weapon used by the assassin to kill me. Naturally, I have to confiscate it." Casually putting the silver spear into his storage ring, Wuqi walked towards Princess Zhonglu with a slightly messy pace, his entire body stained with blood. "Your Highness," Wuqi returned to Ji City today. "Initially, I was going to look for you in Garden of Zhonglu outside the city, but when I heard that you are coming to the Rare Treasures Conference, I immediately came here and waited for you. I never expected that there would be such a ruthless assassin following Princess." Princess Zhonglu frowned as she stared at the wound on Wuqi's left shoulder. With a gloomy expression, she said, "That Yusu is the grandson of Chief General Yu Yi. Recently he has been pestering Zixian everywhere. I never expected that he is such a cruel and merciless man. By Zhuor, from now on, don't let Yusu come near Garden of Zhonglu and the Imperial Palace. If he dares to show his face, break his legs." Are you alright?" Princess Zhonglu came next to Wuqi, pulled his sleeve, and asked him with a fierce tone where he had been during the past few days. Wuqi did not try to hide anything, and told her everything that had happened to him during the past few days. Apart from the fact that he had opened up a secret cave, he told Princess Zhonglu everything, including how he tangled with the Qin army, and how he brought Wanying Dragon King to besiege the Qin army's campsite. He also told her how Lu Chengfeng plotted and annihilated an elite army of 70,000 soldiers from Brotherhood of Mountains clan, and how he wiped out the Gaoling kingdom, which had colluded with the barbarians. Princess Zhonglu was fascinated by the story. She had never left Ji City for her entire life, and when had she ever encountered something so exciting and thrilling? The enormous water system of Longyuan River, the magical flood dragons, the mighty Qin army, the legendary item of virtue, the universal water spirit's divine cauldron of Yu the Great, everything was so magical. Princess Zhongli's anger towards Wuqi for not seeing her for a long time had completely vanished. She kept pulling Wuqi's sleeve, and her body was almost pressed against Wuqi's, while she kept asking, "What happened after that? What happened after that? Is that Yingzheng really so formidable?" And so on. The few young men who followed behind Princess Zhonglu had their faces turned extremely unsightly. They exchanged glances, then turned to look at Wuqi as if they were looking at their mortal enemies. Wuqi could sense the malicious intent in their eyes. He turned his head and gave them a glance, then shook his head mockingly, and casually threw a middle finger at them. With regards to this middle finger, Wuqi had the intention of casting pearls before swine. These fellows simply did not understand the profound meaning contained in this middle finger. After walking side by side with Princess Zhonglu for some distance, two secret agents of scouting office suddenly came over hastily and whispered a few words to him. Yen Bugue hesitated for a brief moment, then he followed behind them. He interrupted Wuqi, who was describing Catfish Flood Dragon's appearance to Princess Zhonglu, and said in a low voice, "Heaven-breaking sword sect's Grand Elder, Nie Yaonu, and sect leader, Nie Baihong, are here these days." Wuqi was taken aback. He gave Princess Zhonglu a look, smiled and held her little hand. "Let's go meet my master and Grand Elder." Princess Zhonglu narrowed her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curved upwards as she said, "Let's go meet my elder sister and my nephew, the sect leader." Wuqi's face twisted immediately, and he glared at Princess Zhonglu grumpily. Under the guidance of the two secret agents, both of them brought a large group of men, and quickly headed towards an abode located on the highest peak of a mountain on the west side of the venue. The small mountain on the west side was occupied by all 13 immortal sects of Great Yin Dynasty. The abodes on the mountain were arranged in picturesque disorder, and were owned by each of the sections. As Nie Yaonu was currently the strongest among all the human immortals of Jin Dan realm in all 13 immortal sects, and with just a single sword, she managed to obtain the position of the strongest in all 13 immortal sects. As a result, the abode of heaven-breaking sword sect occupied the highest peak of the mountain. After the group of men had gone far away, a ball of soft white light suddenly emerged from the bamboo forest. Amidst the white light, Yu Wendy and Yu Qianqian revealed themselves. Yu Wendy looked at the bloodstains on the ground, shook his head and said, "Silver Flood Dragon Yu Su is just so. He is not worthy of Princess Zhang Lu." Indifferently, Yu Qianqian said, "What I'm concerned about is not who is worthy of Princess Zhang Lu. I just want to bring some unhappiness to her and Wu Qi." Yu Wendy knitted his brows into a tight frown, shook his head, sighed and said, "After all, these petty schemes are just some unorthodox techniques. They are not worthy of the attention of everyone. If not because you are my only daughter, and I still need to rely on you to compete with the others in the future, I wouldn't allow you to do whatever you want in this matter. I won't allow you to meddle in this. Let's see what these young men can do." Yu Qianqian frowned slightly, then she smiled and said, "Fine, I won't meddle in this matter." But since he had severely wounded Yu Su with a kick, what would Yui think? Yu Su is the youngest grandson of Yui, and also the youngest genius in the clan who could possibly form the Jindan realm. That kick from Wu Qi was very powerful. With an undisguised gloating expression, Yu Qianqian laughed complacently. Yu Wendy knitted his brows into a tight frown. He looked at his proud daughter, shook his head lightly and said, "You've chosen the wrong person to stand out rashly. If it were the juniors of Qin Wuyang or Fan Yuqi, when Wu Qi severely wounded them, the two old men would jump out to protect him. However, Yui is a talented general, calm and fair, with a magnanimous bearing. He will not meddle in the affairs of these little kids. Just you wait and see. Yu Su will be severely punished by Yui, and Yui will personally write a letter of apology to Duke of Tianyun. After that, this matter will be settled." Yu Qianqian opened her mouth, stared at Yu Wendy and said with a cold voice, "Qianqian doesn't believe it." Yu Wendy gave his daughter an indifferent look, sneered and said, You are still far from mature. You haven't made any progress after all these years. Looks like I'll have to think of a way to marry you off." Upon hearing what Yu Wendy said, Yu Qianqian's face fell instantly. At the same time, Wu Qi and Princess Zhang Lu had arrived at the abode owned by Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect, where they formally paid their respects to Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong. After bowing to both of them attentively, Wu Qi smilingly came before them, handed over a palm-sized jade tablet. "Grand Elder, Master, Disciple wants to exchange this jade tablet for the mystic technique of unity of sword energy script." He smiled at the astounded Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, then hastily said, "I can swear with my prime soul that this unity of sword energy script will be cultivated by me alone, and not a single word will come out from my mouth." Chapter 187. Both Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong were struck dumb by the fact that Wu Qi requested to learn the unity of sword energies script the moment they met. After sizing up Wu Qi for a long while, Nie Yaonu smiled and said, "Wu Qi, the unity of sword energies script is a supreme sword technique that can only be cultivated after one has condensed the Jin Dan. It is a technique that condenses the sword energies and sword beams found in the 5 elements sword technique, which contains all 5 elements, into the purest sword energies under the heaven, without any element. It is invincible and invincible. With your current cultivation base, it is still too early for you to learn it." Nie Baihong's answer was even more straightforward. "Apart from my mother and myself, no one in Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect has learned the unity of sword energy script. Wu Qi, oh Wu Qi, what is in this jade? Is it worth it for me to teach you the unity of sword energy script?" Wu Qi looked at Nie Yaonu, smiled and said, "Grand Elder, could it be that Wu Qi will never be able to condense the Jin Dan for the rest of his life? Master, if you want to develop and expand Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect, do you really need this jade tablet? This jade tablet is the map of the dozens of energy stone veins, and over 20 rare metal veins that I found in Ming Mountains. Those metal veins are the best materials for crafting magical treasures." Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong's faces fell instantly. They fixed their eyes on Wu Qi and asked in a deep voice, "Are you serious?" Wuqi raised his right hand and said in a serious tone, "I can swear a life oath. It's true." Both mother and son exchanged a glance. Then Nie Yaonu said in a deep voice, "After those mineral veins are excavated, I'll give you 50% of the profit." She pulled out a translucent jade slip from under her sleeve, then focused her mind and carved all the incantations of the unity of sword energies script on it. After that, she casually threw it over to Wuqi. After that, she rolled up her sleeve and pulled the jade tablet from Wuqi's hand into her palm. After that, she sent her divine sense into the jade tablet, and a joyful smile immediately emerged on her face. The map was so detailed that it showed the distribution of every tree near the mineral vein. If such a detailed map was forged, then it would take a lot of effort. Only when Wuqi personally ventured into the depths of Meng Mountains, found these mineral veins, and used the mystic technique of crafting jade maps used by cultivators to enlarge the surrounding scenery, would he be able to obtain such a detailed map. Nie Yaonu nodded satisfyingly, then turned to Wuqi and said, "Memorize the unity of sword energies script now. Then destroy the jade slip. Swear an oath that apart from you, no one is allowed to learn this mystic technique." She paused for a brief moment, then continued with a deep voice, "In the future, if you want to recruit a disciple, after getting the permission from me, your disciple can learn this mystic technique. This is not within the scope of the oath." Gladly, Wuqi merged all the mystic technique recorded in the jade slip into the depth of his soul, then crushed the jade slip with his finger. Without any hesitation, he immediately swore an extremely vicious oath. He did not play any tricks on the oath, and indeed, he would not let anyone learn this mystic technique. The power of this unity of sword energies script was extraordinary, and it was just right for him to use in front of others, using it to conceal the various spells he was cultivating from the scroll of stealing. Several tens of thousands of profound and subtle cultivation techniques were imprinted in his mind, and there were also 72 diagrams of circulation routes flashing across his mind. In just a blink of an eye, Wuqi had memorized the mystic technique of unity of sword energies script. His insane intelligence began to analyze this technique, while the innate energies in the main meridians in his body began to circulate according to the circulation routes of this mystic technique. In these meridians, the innate energies, which were a few times denser than mercury, were rolling and twisting in his dantian while producing loud swooshing noises. Gradually, they condensed into the embryonic form of a Jin Dan. As long as he continued cultivating for another half a month, Wuqi had the confidence to use the unity of sword energies script as the core technique, and form the so-called heaven-stealing false pill in his dantian. As for the so-called heaven-stealing false pill, this Jin Dan was a real Jin Dan. The reason why it was called a false pill was that this Jin Dan could be abandoned at any time. Even if it was thrown out of his body and exploded, it would not cause any harm to Wuqi. The only function of this Jin Dan was to circulate some stolen cultivation techniques, using them to confuse the people. The real foundation of Wuqi's cultivation was still the 10 Jin Dan in the 7 stealing heaven meridians in his arms. Although the Jin Dan in his dantian contained an enormous amount of innate energies, it was actually powered by the sword energies cultivated by heaven-breaking sword sect, which had nothing to do with the scroll of stealing. Only a tiny thread of Wuqi's divine sense was fused into the Jin Dan, as most of the power of his soul was fused with the 10 innate Jin Dan. Sensing the transformation in his body, Wuqi could not help but let out a joyful smile, and kept bowing to Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong. Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong were struck dumb when they heard the gurgling noises coming from Wuqi's meridians, which sounded like a great river flowing and rocking. The mother and son exchanged a glance, and their opinion of Wuqi grew even higher. There was no need to examine the condition inside Wuqi's body. Just by listening to the gurgling noises of his innate energies, they could tell that his meridians were extremely wide and tough, and had been fully filled with innate energies. On top of that, the quality of his innate energies was excellent, or else, it would be impossible for them to produce such a sound. Perhaps, after Nie Baihong, heaven-breaking sword sect would have another formidable force. Nie Yaonu nodded her head happily, and began to make other plans. At this moment, A few gurgling noises were heard coming from the outside, as all the organizers of the Rare Treasures Conference flew down to the jade dais located in the center of the lake. Today was the last day of the Rare Treasures Conference. At the moment when the sun in the east had completely leaped out from the horizon, the conference officially began. Wuxia and Princess Zhonglu did not return to their own abode. Together with Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, they stood on the balcony of heaven-breaking Sword Sec's abode, looking down at the jade dais located in the center of the lake. They saw a few old men clad in white clothes and wearing tall hats standing solemnly in the center of the jade dais. On top of the jade dais were nearly 100 cultivators, whose cultivation base was at least middle stage of Jin Dan realm, and the strongest one was a cultivator that Wuqi could not see through. Nie Yaonu shook her head and said, "Hee, a few old fools from Myriad Dao Alliance are here. Look at those few men clad in light green long robes. They are the elders of Myriad Dao Alliance. Lord Heavenly Spirit is from Heavenly Spirit Sect, and he is the founding ancestral master of Heavenly Spirit Sect. Layman White Dawn is from White Dawn Temple, and he is the founding ancestral master of White Dawn Temple. The other three are not as important as them, but they are also formidable figures from Myriad Dao Alliance." Nie Yaonu turned to look at Wuqi, smiled and said, "Wuqi, perhaps you don't know the background of Myriad Dao Alliance? Myriad Dao Alliance is..." With a gloomy face, Wuqi interrupted Nie Yaonu's words. He stared at Lord Heavenly Spirit, who was standing solemnly on the jade dais, and said with a cold grin, "I know what Myriad Dao Alliance is. Lord Heavenly Spirit is the founding ancestral master of Heavenly Spirit Sect? I heard that 2 of the 13 Jin Dan elders of Heavenly Spirit Sect who were executed by His Majesty are his great-grandsons?" Nie Yaonu smiled. Thoughtfully, she turned to look at Xiong-jin and Xiong-yin, who were standing closely behind Wuqi. She nodded her head and said, "Yes, you are." Wuqi smiled as well. He pointed his finger at Lord Heavenly Spirit and said to Princess Zhonglu, "This old fool had sent his disciples and grand-disciples to Meng Mountains to hunt down Wuqi, but in the end, they were all chopped into meat paste by a group of subordinates of Wanying Dragon King. Wuqi has a deep grudge against him. Princess, you have to be careful in the future." Princess Zhongli's face turned extremely unsightly. She stared at Lord Heavenly Spirit, nodded her head slowly and said, "Is that so? I understand now. Heavenly Spirit Sect. They colluded with Wei Merchant and conspired against the law, trying to rebel against their superiors. TSK, Great Yin Dynasty does not lack these few nascent soul patriarchs of Heavenly Spirit Sect." Princess Zhongli's words were filled with a murderous aura, which made even Nie Yaonu cast a sidelong glance at her. Nie Baihong narrowed his eyes and smiled. If Princess Zhonglu really wanted to deal with Heavenly Spirit Sect, he would be more than happy to see it happen. While the crowd was sizing up the figures on the platform, a small uproar was suddenly heard coming from outside the abode of Heaven-breaking Sword Sect. Just now, when Wuqi and Princess Zhonglu came into the abode to pay their respects to Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, those descendants of influential officials and young men of Great Yin Dynasty standing behind Princess Zhonglu were stopped by Nie Yaonu's trusted disciples. Now, as the meeting was about to begin, and Princess Zhonglu still had not come out, a few descendants of influential officials had begun to show their displeasure to Nie Yaonu's disciples. Wuqi gave Nie Yaonu a look. Nie Yaonu's face had turned dark and gloomy. Then Wuqi turned to look at Princess Zhonglu. Princess Zhonglu frowned, twitched her little mouth, snorted coldly and said, "Why are these annoying fellows still outside? Chase them away. And for those who refuse to leave, break their legs and throw them down the mountain. Don't be afraid of death. Great Yin Dynasty may not have many other things, but rascals like them are a dime a dozen. Killing a few of them will make things much quieter." Swaying his huge, pitch-black body, Xiongyin walked down the stairs and came to the entrance of the abode. After a few loud slaps that shook the heaven and earth, a dead silence reigned in front of the abode. No one dared to make a sound anymore. Then, Xiongyin walked up the stairs with his burly body, crossed his arms in front of his chest, and stood behind Wuqi with a menacing look in his eyes. Princess Zhonglu laughed. She frowned and said with a puzzled tone, "These people have been annoying for the past 2 days. After Zixian was injured last time, She had just recovered from her secluded cultivation half a month ago. Yu Qianqian brought them to Garden of Zhonglu for a banquet, and after that, they have been pestering Zixian. Especially that Yu Su, who was injured by your kick just now, because he had just led an army and wiped out a vassal kingdom that had the intention of rebelling. He was praised by Grandpa, and was even conferred the title of Baron. No matter where Zixian goes, he would follow her. They are really annoying. Wuqi nodded his head thoughtfully. Hastily, he comforted Princess Zhonglu with a few words, then gave her the gifts he plundered from Catfish Flooddragon. Princess Zhonglu was beaming with joy, and had completely forgotten about Yu Su and the others. Meanwhile, Wuqi was pondering in his mind, wondering what was the intention of Yu Qianqian by playing such a trick. He had a very bad impression of Yu Qianqian, as she was not a woman who could be liked openly. On top of the jade dais, the few old men clad in white robes and crowns were talking loudly. Their voices were strong and vigorous, and their voices could be heard echoing through the area of 10 miles in circumference. Even those who were standing in the abodes on top of the small mountains could hear every single word clearly. After some pleasantries, a few pretty maidservants came up to the jade dais, carrying a large box made of cold jade in their hands. Today was the 30th day of the Rare Treasures Conference, and also the last day. As such, there was no need to explain all the rules. The few maidservants opened the box, revealing 3 strange flowers, each about 1 foot in circumference and several thousand pure white and translucent petals. They showed the flowers to all the people in the abodes on top of the surrounding mountains, then hastily covered the box. An old man on top of the jade dais cried out with a loud voice, "The 1,000-petal snowflower is at least 3,000 years old. It can be used to concoct all kinds of spirit medicines that can cleanse one's spirit, exorcise evil spirits, and detoxify poison. The starting price is 200,000 gold coins, or 200 pieces of lower-grade energy stones. Each increment must be no less than 10,000 gold coins, or 10 pieces of lower-grade energy stones." All the people in the abodes had a profound cultivation base, so naturally, they had an excellent eyesight. Diagonally below Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect, in an abode surrounded by green pines and cypresses, an old man's voice slowly rang out. "The 1,000-petal snowflower is a good item. Everyone present here is a knowledgeable expert. Let me throw out a brick to start the ball rolling. Give me a price first. 210,000 gold coins." Niaoyanu twitched her lips, laughed mockingly and said, "Are these people from Valley of Medicine still so stingy? They want to buy these 3 rare treasures with such a small amount of money? Even if I have to bring them back and raise them in the lake, I can't let Valley of Medicine take them away so easily." She took a deep breath, then cried out with a stern voice, 1,000,000 gold coins. I've taken a fancy to these 3 flowers." Chapter 188. Wuqi gazed at Niaoyanu in shock. What she did was a malicious bidding. Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect was famous for the sword, and apart from that, only the script of Heaven-Patching Formation cultivated by Lu Chengfeng was the best in the Tao of formations. The 1,000-petal snowflower was completely useless to Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect. Therefore, by bidding a sky-high price, she was purposely picking a fight with Valley of Medicine. Inside the abode of Valley of Medicine, the old voice roared furiously, "Niaoyanu, what is the meaning of this? What is the use of the 1,000-petal snowflower to your Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect? 1,000,000 gold coins, 1,000,000 gold coins. If you want it, I'll give it to you." Niaoyanu laughed out loud and said, "Old Songer, thank you for your generosity. Since you have said so, the 1,000-petal snowflower belongs to me now. Come, quickly bring me 3,000-petal snowflower. I'll pay for it on the spot." A dead silence reigned inside the abode of Valley of Medicine. No one made a sound. The old man on the platform said slowly, "The Grand Elder of Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect, Niaoyanu, bids 1,000,000 gold coins for 3,000 years old 1,000-petal snowflower. Is there anyone else who wants to bid?" A beam of light shone from the platform, and a light screen emerged above the old man's head. A string of numbers appeared on the screen. 1,100,000 gold coins. It was unknown whether it was Valley of Medicine who made the bid again, or someone else had intervened. But this time, no one was stupid enough to bid. Instead, they bid the price using the small auction formation in a well-behaved manner. Apart from the organizer of the convention, no one would know who made the bid by using the auction formation. It could effectively prevent the malicious bidding by Nie Yaonu. Nie Yaonu laughed, then said with a cold voice with a gloomy face, "I suppose it is Valley of Medicine who made the bid. Apart from them, no one else can use these flowers." Humph, last time, Valley of Medicine sold us 3 bottles of soul-replenishing pills, which can heal the damage to the soul. There are 18 pills in 3 bottles, and they have blackmailed us for 1,800,000 gold coins. Each of these pills is almost equivalent to an upper-grade magical item. If I don't make them pay, who should I vent my anger to? She forcefully slapped on the auction formation with her right hand, and increased the price by 1 million. The number on the screen changed once more, going from 1 million gold to 2 million gold. A few old men wearing tall hats showed bright smiles and shouted, 1 million gold ingots. Is there anyone else who wants to make a bid? Is there anyone else who can offer a higher price than 1 million gold? The number on the light screen changed again, going from 1 million gold to 5 million gold. Nie Yaonu sneered, clapped her palm again, and increased the price by 1 million gold coins. Inside the Medicine King's Valley's abode, a faintly discernible wave of magical power faintly spread out, and the number on the light curtain suddenly changed to 6 million gold. Nie Yaonu pondered for a brief moment, then reached out her palm, and was about to press the button once again. But this time, before she could press the button, the number on the light screen suddenly changed to 4 million gold. A deep, angry roar was heard coming out from the abode of Valley of Medicine. Nie Yaonu was dumbfounded as she said, Is this old hag being used by someone?" As soon as he finished speaking, the number on the light screen changed to 5 million gold, more than 20 times the base price. Nie Yaonu pondered for a brief moment, then shook her head and stopped bidding. She turned to Wuxia and Princess Zhonglu, smiled and said in a low voice, 3,000 years old snowflower of 1,000 petals can be concocted into pills and sold according to the market price. The price they can get is only this much. I've made them lose all profits from this transaction, so even if I can vent my anger, I can't go too far. No one else bid, and Valley of Medicine easily obtained the ownership of the 3 rare flowers. After the incident of Nie Yaonu intervening in the auction, no one dared to bid for the following rare and precious spirit items. Instead, they all used the auction formation on their own balconies to bid for them. In this way, no one would know who was bidding, and no enemy would deliberately raise the price. The following dozens of items had all been auctioned at the price they deserved, and none of them had reached an insanely high price like the first item. Nie Yaonu no longer caused any trouble. Instead, she carefully and cautiously observed all the items being auctioned, and from them, she selected a few rare natural materials with decent quality and placed them in her hands. In Wuqi's eyes, the quality of these materials was just average, and could not be considered as some precious natural treasures. He pulled Princess Zhonglu aside, chatting and laughing in a low voice. Both of them had formed a small world of their own, and did not put any outsiders in their eyes. Time went by minute after minute. When 3.5 hours had passed, an old man on the jade dais suddenly cried out loudly, "Now we are auctioning a total of 100 slaves from the Longbow Kingdom. The people of Longbow Kingdom are born with a lifespan of over 1,000 years, and those who have attained a certain level of cultivation base can live up to 10,000 years. These 100 slaves from the Longbow Kingdom are all elite warriors of the Longbow Kingdom. Even the weakest among them has the cultivation base of physique strengthening tier of Xiantian realm, and the strongest 10 slaves have the cultivation base of early stage embryonic breath realm. These are rare and precious items that can only be found by chance, and not by searching for them." Wu Qi's eyes went wide. Slaves from the Longbow Kingdom? The several tens of feet tall giants that once appeared next to Wei Xiaoxiao? The ones in the classic of mountains and seas? The culprit who could catch a gigantic turtle from the ocean with just a fishing rod, and left only the 3 islands of Penglai out of the 5 immortal mountains? The legendary gigantic creatures that could stand as tall as the heaven and earth? Longbow Kingdom people were also a kind of human beings, but they were favored by the heaven and earth, and possessed an enormous power. They almost never encountered any bottleneck in their cultivation. And as long as they kept cultivating step by step, each of them had the hope of becoming a heaven immortal. However, every time they advanced their cultivation base, they would encounter an extremely violent heaven immortal tribulation. If they could survive it, they would become immortal, and if they could not, their souls would be completely destroyed. Whether it was forming the Jin Dan, or breaking the gold core to form the nascent soul, countless Longbow Kingdom people would be killed by the heaven tribulation. A Longbow Kingdom man who had attained the Mahayana realm of Jin Dan could fight against a human cultivator of nascent soul realm. A Longbow Kingdom man of nascent soul realm could fight against a human cultivator of nascent soul realm. A Longbow Kingdom man of heaven immortal realm could fight against a human cultivator of nascent soul realm and divine transformation realm. Wuxia took a deep breath and rested his attention on the jade platform. The old man on top of the jade platform raised up a strange-shaped ring and said with a loud voice, "Apart from these 100 slaves of Longbow Kingdom, we will also auction this spirit breeding ring. As long as the natural energy exists in the outside world, there is a small mustard seed immortal's cave in this ring, which is about 100 acres in circumference. These slaves of Longbow Kingdom can live and cultivate in this ring. 100 slaves of Longbow Kingdom that can be brought along with you. You can only bid with energy stones. The starting price is 10,000 pieces of middle-grade energy stones, and each increment must be no less than 100. The exchange rate between middle-grade energy stones and lower-grade energy stones was basically 1 to 100. The starting price for these 100 slaves of Longbow Kingdom was 1 million lower-grade energy stones. The price made Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong's faces fall. Although Heaven-Breaking Sword Sect had enough of these slaves, it was controlled by Yen Li, and the private money they had was far from enough to pay the starting price. Wuqi's eyes shone brightly. He gave Princess Zhonglu a look and said in a low voice, "I want these people. I am in need of a capable man." Wuqi's foundation in this place was very shallow. Although he had some money and materials, he did not have a capable man. Xiong Jin and Xiong Yin were sent by Yendan to protect him, and they had nothing to do with him. Among these 100 slaves of Longbow Kingdom, 10 of them had cultivated to the realm of Jin Dan, and they were of great use to Wuqi. He could train them a little, temper their fleshly bodies with herbs, and stimulate the ancestral bloodline of Longbow Kingdom in their bodies, allowing them to form a very powerful, heavenly 100-spirit warring formation found in Scroll of Stealing. With that, 100 Jindan warriors of Longbow Kingdom would be able to fight head-on against an existence who had just stepped into the realm of nascent soul and divine transformation. Once he had them, Wuqi's ability to protect himself in this world would be greatly improved. Scroll of Stealing did not provide Wuqi with all kinds of cultivation techniques that he could cultivate with. However, there were many unorthodox techniques that could stimulate the bloodline, stimulate the strength, and allow one to cultivate faster. When Wuqi saw 100 longbow men standing on the shore, each standing over 100 feet tall, their bodies as white as snow, their hair silver green, and their eyes gleaming brightly and ferociously, he nearly drooled. When the old man on the jade platform announced the start of the bidding, Wuqi immediately pressed the button on the auction formation, raising the starting price to 20,000 pieces of mid-grade energy stones. He did have some gains in Ming Mountains. All the belongings of 12 gold core cultivators and Su Fu, a peak-stage nascent soul expert, had been swept clean by him. To him, a mere 20,000 pieces of mid-grade energy stones was not a big sum of money. However, the number on the screen was changing rapidly, and in just a blink of an eye, it had risen to 50,000 mid-grade energy stones. It was obvious that these 100 slaves from Longbow Kingdom were very attractive. Not only Wuqi had his eyes on them, but some other influential nobles and immortal sects had their eyes on these 100 slaves as well. With the ability of these powerful sects, they might not have the confidence to overcome the nascent soul tribulation, but they still had a 10 to 20% chance to help these longbow men survive the Jindan tribulation. Once they survived, they would have a dozen to 20 formidable slaves of Jindan realm, and the value of these slaves would be immeasurable. With a gloomy face, Wuxia pressed the button a few more times, and the price of these slaves had soared to 150,000 pieces of mid-grade energy stones. At this point in time, those who were still bidding were probably the few wealthiest sects, such as Heavenly Spirit Sect and Valley of Medicine, who had earned a huge profit every year. The rest of the immortal sects had been frightened by the outrageous price, and dared not to bid anymore. 150,000 mid-grade energy stones. This was the total amount of energy stones that Great Yin Dynasty could provide to an immortal sect for 30 years. Apart from Heavenly Spirit Sect, Valley of Medicine, and a few other wealthy sects, where else could the other sects have so many energy stones left? Even if they did, they dared not to take them out in public, as it would definitely arouse the suspicion of Great Yin Dynasty. Why are you hoarding so many energy stones in your sect? Are you trying to rebel? Wuqi's eyes turned bloodshot. He used his divine sense to scan through the storage of energy stones in his storage ring, and was about to press the button and input the price of 300,000 mid-grade energy stones. However, Princess Zhongli grabbed his hand. She glared at Wuqi coquettishly, then said with a crisp voice, "I've taken a fancy to these slaves. Anyone who thinks his storage is richer than the storage of Great Yin Dynasty, just come and compete with me." With a light flick of her finger, Princess Zhongli slowly pressed the black button, and with her voice, she input the price of another 150,000 mid-grade energy stones. A dead silence reigned the auction hall. No one made a sound. Just like that, 100 longbow slaves fell into the hands of Princess Zhongli. Sticking out her tongue, Princess Zhongli lowered her voice and whispered, "I've used up all my power. In a place like the Rare Treasures Conference, it is enough for me to show off my power once. If there are any more good things, those old fools will never let me have them." She smiled shyly, then lowered her head and said, 10 years ago, after I bought a 9,000 years old fire ginseng essence with 3 copper coins, Grandpa Emperor made a rule that I can only make a forceful bid like this once in every Rare Treasures Conference. 3 copper coins, a 9,000 years old fire ginseng essence. Wuqi, too, turned to look at Princess Zhongli in surprise, cursing in his mind. Compared to her, you are the real thief. Not long after that, the host of the auction brought up the spirit breeding ring, and all 100 longbow men were placed into it. Wuqi dripped a drop of blood onto the surface of the ring, then injected a thread of divine sense into it. He immediately sensed that all 100 souls were completely controlled by his divine sense, and with just a thought, he could wipe out all 100 souls. 100 powerful slaves were now in his hands. Chapter 189. After that, Wuqi began to bid in all directions. In just 2 hours, he had auctioned over 20 items, all of which were exotic flowers and herbs. He had used all his strength to compete with Valley of Medicine, and spared no cost. He had spent all the energy stones in his storage ring, and bought all these exotic flowers and herbs. Of course, Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong were pleased that Valley of Medicine had humiliated them, and the way they looked at Wuqi had become much kinder. Meanwhile, Wuqi was laughing wildly in his mind. With these exotic flowers and herbs, he could gather the main ingredients of the Ancestral Awakening and Body Tempering Soup, with 2 different prescriptions. As the name suggested, the Ancestral Awakening and Body Tempering Soup could purify one's blood essence, temper the fleshly body, and obtain the strongest power of their ancestors' bloodline. After consuming this soup, the people of Longbow Kingdom would have a chance to strengthen their fleshly body, purify their blood essence, and obtain the bloodline of their ancestors. According to the legends, the ancestors of Longbow Kingdom people were a race of deities in the ancient times. Longbow Kingdom people were the descendants of deities. The reason why their thunder tribulations of Jin Dan, nascent soul, and divinity were so severe was because their innate bloodline was too strong, and even the heaven was jealous of them. Therefore, such a powerful thunder tribulation was sent down. As long as they could stimulate even a tiny bit of the blood essence of an ancient deity, these 100 Longbow Kingdom people would be able to grow stronger quickly, and become the best helpers for Wuqi. As all the main ingredients had been auctioned, with the help of some common spirit herbs, the concoction of the ancestral awakening and body-tempering soup could begin. After a fierce round of auctioning, the price of these exotic flowers and herbs had skyrocketed by dozens of times. Although Wuxia did not participate in the auction for the next few spirit herbs, the people of Valley of Medicine had been panicking because of him. They had tried their best to buy these spirit herbs at a sky-high price, but in the end, they had wasted a huge amount of energy stones. This made Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong laugh out loud, and their fondness for Wuxia grew. Time went by, and in the afternoon, a group of fully armed elite soldiers walked onto the platform. Each of them had the cultivation base of Peak Jindan realm. These soldiers were clad in blood-red armors. Obviously, they were the captains of the most elite army of Great Yin Dynasty, the Blood Swallow Army. Among them, 10 armored soldiers were leading them, each possessing the cultivation base of Nascent Soul Realm. The enormous ripples of energy emanating from them shocked even Wuxia. The closer he got to the core of power of Great Yin Dynasty, the more things he knew, and the more Wuxia felt that the overall strength of Great Yin Dynasty was unfathomable. Perhaps, when compared to Daqin Dynasty, Great Yan's overall strength was not much weaker. It was just that the cultivation base of Yandan and his men was not as strong as Yingzheng. Judging from their potential forces in other aspects, they were on par with the performance of Daqin Dynasty. Protected by so many human immortals and earth immortals, a translucent cold jade box was placed on the jade platform. Inside it were 5 pearls the size of a human head, 2 yellow and 3 green. As soon as he saw these beads, Wuxia jumped up. The 2 yellow pearls were condensed from acquired earth element energy, and the 3 cyan pearls were condensed from acquired wood element energy. A total of 5 acquired spirit pearls appeared right before Wuqia's eyes. The old man who presided over the auction on the jade platform stroked his beard and smiled reservedly. He laughed and said, "My honorable guests, since an acquired spirit gold pearl was bought by Chief General Yu at the price of 30 cities 10 years ago, a few largest merchants of Great Yin Dynasty had sent out a great number of men to search all over the world. Over the past 10 years, after sacrificing several thousand men in 5 extremely dangerous spirit caves, we finally found 5 acquired spirit pearls." Gently stroking the acquired spirit pearls in the box, the old man breathed out a long sigh and said, "I don't need to explain the benefits of these acquired spirit pearls. In short, as long as one is cultivating with a cultivation technique that corresponds to the 5 elements, after refining it into one's body, it will be able to help one's cultivation speed increase. After refining it into a natal magical treasure, its power will be limitless. If you place it in your mansion, together with an energy-gathering formation, you will be able to construct a natural spirit cave for your family members to cultivate in." Gently stroking the spirit pearls, the old man said in a deep voice, "According to the price 10 years ago, the starting price of these 5 acquired spirit pearls is 10 cities, and they must be cities with a population of over 300,000 people. There is no upper limit. Please bid for the first spirit pearl of earth element." Without saying a word, Wuxia slammed his fist heavily onto the auction formation, raising the price to the sky-high price of 40 cities. Currently, the fief under his name was 1/5 of a province, and there were several hundred cities of different sizes in it. He did not care about the loss of these dozens of cities. The acquired spirit pearl was kept in Yu Yi's mansion, and Wuxia had a great confidence in stealing it. With the addition of 1 acquired spirit pearl of earth element and 1 acquired spirit pearl of wood element, Wuxia would be able to gather all 5 acquired spirit pearls. Then, following the 7 foundation establishment technique found in Scroll of Stealing, he would construct a minor acquired spirit formation of 5 elements in his dantian. From then on, the spirit energy in his body would be regenerated, and the speed of his cultivation would definitely be much faster. Jindan had all 5 elements in his body, and by cultivating the unity of sword energy script, the power of his sword energy would be at least 10 times stronger than Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, who did not have all 5 elements. The sky-high price of 40 cities had shocked everyone. 10 years ago, when Yu bought the acquired spirit pearl, it was only 30 cities. For a moment, the crowd was rendered speechless by Wuxia. When the old man announced that the spirit pearl of earth element was now Wuqi's property, whispers were heard coming from all the abodes, as if they were discussing which prodigal son had spent such a huge price to buy this spirit pearl. The first spirit pearl of earth element was bought by Wuqi with a sky-high price, and the second spirit pearl of earth element had attracted even more people's attention. Among the 13 immortal sects of Great Yan Dynasty, there were 2 sects, Yellow Essence Sect and Indestructible Sect. Both of them were cultivating with earth element techniques. Yellow Essence Sect was an expert in earth element techniques, as they could move mountains and drop rocks from the sky. Their Dao techniques were very powerful. As for Indestructible Sect, they cultivated the indestructible body of earth, using the energies of the earth to temper their fleshly body, giving them a very strong fleshly body. On top of that, they were able to cast the divine thunder of earth, and the power of their thunder technique was also very powerful. Both sects had exerted all their strength to fight for this spirit pearl of earth element. Under the urging of their seniors, their disciples had offered up 1 or 2 cities of their fief, gathering together to bid for the second spirit pearl of earth. However, those disciples from influential clans who had joined the immortal sects to cultivate didn't have any achievements, and neither did they have any large fief. In the end, it was the Indestructible Sect who bought the second spirit pearl of earth element with the price of 47 cities. After that, it was the auction of the spirit pearl of earth element. The first spirit pearl of earth element was not very exciting. With 3 spirit pearls of earth element being auctioned, the crowd had no interest in bidding for it. Wuqi clenched his jaws, once again offered the price of 40 cities and bought the second spirit pearl. When the host of the auction brought the 2 spirit pearls into Wuqi's abode, he did not try to conceal it. Right in front of everyone, he fused the 2 acquired spirit pearls into his body and fused them into his dantian. Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong could not help but nod their heads silently. With these 2 acquired spirit pearls, Wuqi's cultivation speed would definitely surpass those people of the same age as him. Under the powerful effect of these 2 acquired spirit pearls, all those geniuses and innate talents would be nothing. However, both Nie Yaonu and her son were very poor, and they did not own any cities or fief that they could squander. Therefore, they could only stare at the spirit pearls, and could never get them. Meanwhile, Princess Zhongli was looking at Wuqi with a smile on her face. Wuqi's generous spending of 80 cities in exchange for 2 acquired spirit pearls had made Princess Zhongli feel refreshed and happy. Compared to Wuqi's generous spending of tens of cities in one go, those sons of influential clans who had been pestering her these days, spending all their efforts to hold some luxurious banquets just to please her, were really not worth a single penny. Wuqi saw a trace of envy flash across the eyes of Nie Yaonu and Nie Baihong, especially in Nie Baihong's eyes, which were filled with a faint trace of expectation. He also noticed that the strongest spirit root in Nie Baihong's body happened to be of wood element. Without hesitation, he pressed a series of buttons on the auction formation, and bought the second wood spirit pearl with the frightening price of 51 cities. When the host of the auction brought the acquired spirit pearl into his abode, Wuqi held it up with both hands and presented it to Nie Baihong respectfully. Nie Baihong hesitated and felt too embarrassed to accept the acquired spirit pearl, but Nie Yaonu was more open-minded than him. She took the acquired spirit pearl and shoved it into Nie Baihong's hand, smiled faintly and said, "Don't act like a little girl. You can just accept the gift from your own disciple. In the future, if Wuqi runs into any trouble in Ji City, as his master, just don't stay idle." Nie Baihong let out a long laugh. Without hesitation, he grabbed the wood spirit pearl, refined it with the true flame of Samadhi, and fused it into his dantian. Different from Wuqi, after fusing the wood spirit pearl into his dantian, Nie Baihong quickly made his gold core and the wood spirit pearl resonate with each other, breathing in and out their gold core and energies, gradually fusing them into one. He had taken the wood spirit pearl as his prime magical treasure and refined it. Once he succeeded in fusing it, this spirit pearl that was extremely compatible with his bone structure would allow Nie Baihong to unleash a lethality that was a few times stronger than before. The result was just as Wuqi had expected. A bloody competition broke out for the third wood spirit pearl. The Valley of Medicine and the Green Spirit Sect. A sect that cultivated the same wood element cultivation technique, fought crazily for the last wood spirit pearl. The two sides increased the stakes bit by bit. And finally, Medicine King's Valley relied on the advantage of having more children of influential families among their disciples to pool together 83 cities as fiefdoms, taking this spirit wood bead as their own. Many cultivators from the Green Spirit sect who failed in the competition flew into a rage. Accompanied by a wave of crazy curses, the abode where they stayed was shattered into pieces. A couple dozens of green beams soared into the sky, returning to their sect in a flash. Upon seeing this, Wuxia could not help but shake his head and sneer. 83 cities. The disciples from influential clans from both sects could only gather 83 cities as their fief. This number was really not enough. However, when he thought about it, the disciples from influential clans were, after all, the disciples from influential clans. It was fine if they were given the income of 1 or 2 cities as pocket money, but it was impossible for them to have the complete dominion over the cities. Therefore, the several thousand disciples from influential clans from both sects were only able to gather 80 cities as their fief. This made Wuxia look down on them. After exchanging a few pleasantries with Princess Zhonglu, the auction had entered into its final phase. For the past 10 years, the organizers of the Rare Treasures Conference were unable to identify them. But they knew they must be some kind of rare and precious objects, would be put up for auction. Regardless of the final price they had to pay for these unidentifiable objects, the organizer would request the auctioneer to reveal the details of these objects to the public, so as to increase the knowledge of the people. This was also one of the conditions of the auction, so that they would not be embarrassed if they saw a treasure in the future, and still couldn't identify it. Wuxia looked at the jade platform in the center of the lake with great interest, wanting to see if there were any rare and precious objects that would be put up for auction. In the end, the first object nearly made him jump out to kill someone and rob their wealth. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.